9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
From a PETA point of view, see you guys are in the newspapers today, PETA, and it's about the definition of a rat. Have you seen this story?
Yeah, I have indeed. And, rats are individuals. And of course, we want everyone to respect all animals. But one point I would like to raise is that, we mention animals who are going extinct. There are over 2,000 species right now that are on the endangered list.
Rats
and there are thousands more. Well, rats are important as well, but we're here to talk about, the dire wolves. And it's important to point out that we need to think about what's going to happen to these animals once they're released back into the wild, because this is really complicated.
Yes,
and we need to remember that humans don't have a good track record of our treatment of wolves. Thousands are being culled as we speak due to perceived overpopulation problems. So why are scientists trying to bring back more of these animals when their cousins are being blasted out of their homes? It doesn't make sense, and we need to focus our efforts on protecting animals that are already here.
I get that. Just to say, a rat, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, is a small rodent. The noun can mean also an unpleasant person who deceives others or is not loyal. And you guys think that's unfair to rats, and you want it redesignated and redescribed. And I don't know if James Cagney would appreciate with you, because I think when he was going, "You dirty rat, you dirty rat," I don't think that he was really wanting anybody kind or nice coming to him or whatever, but that's historic film.
Well, look, this is a completely friendly request, and we want to encourage everyone to respect all animals. Rats are lovely creatures, they're intelligent, and they're actually very clean. So, this was a friendly request to the Oxford Dictionary, just to right a simple wrong.
OK.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Very happy Easter to you and a good afternoon. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News on this wonderful Easter Friday, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, breaking news from earlier today. More than 2,000 small boat migrants have arrived in Britain in a record week of illegal crossings. An unholy row for Keir Starmer at Easter. And counter-terror cops at the Metropolitan Police Force took a break from hunting jihadis yesterday to hunt Easter eggs at a staff jolly. The Met's eggheads have been slammed as ludicrous, with one cop adding, "The world's terrorists must be laughing at us." And Ed Miliband, Ed Davey and Greenpeace plan to kill the Whitehaven coal mine. But Reform Deputy Leader Richard Tice claims British coal is the best in the world and could and should be used to power the Scunthorpe steelworks. Mr Tice will join me on today's show, and we'll be asking, is it time to reopen the pits and give coal, not dole, to Britain's forgotten industrial heartlands? If you're tucking into an Easter Friday fish supper today, first of all, best of British. Secondly, enjoy it while you can, because British chippies are getting battered thanks to the perfect storm of the EU cod quotas and Labour's national insurance hike. I'll be joined by a champion chippy later in the show. Yum, yum. Now, this might divide the nation. But do you like chips and fish with mushy peas and curry sauce? The whole lot. I do. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I'm going to sample some in a minute and introduce you to what I think the Jedi, next level. Don't knock it until you've tried it. It shouldn't work on paper, but by Jove, it works in the real world. And we'll be talking to a master chippy, a champion chippy, a British fryer who's up there with Darth Vader himself. And I want to put this to him. This is the best in the land. Tell me what you think, because British fish and chip shops could be under a huge amount of pressure. The European Union, yeah, that lot. They're plundering all of our cod, putting prices through the roof. 15 quid for fish and chips in a chip shop, not even in a boozer. People are complaining so much the fish and chip shops are embarrassed about it. And national insurance, minimum wage and net zero, of course. I mean, those fryers don't just fuel themselves. Your fish and chip supper could be in peril. Enjoy them while you can. If you want it from me, have them with mushy peas and curry sauce. That's what I think. Let me know what you think. It might be an unholy alliance to you, but to me, I'm telling you, it's a marriage made in heaven. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. And there's your headlines on this Easter Friday. Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. The top stories: a man has died trying to cross the English Channel. The migrant's body was brought to Dover Harbour along with dozens of other migrants who were taken off a small boat in the middle of the Channel early this morning. Border Force disembarked 51 migrants before the rescue vessel Typhoon moved position to the nearby Dover RNLI station. The cause of this tragedy is still not known. A police spokesperson said officers have launched an investigation to establish the circumstances leading to his death. At least 225 migrants have lost their lives in the Channel since the small boats crisis began in 2018. Home Office official figures confirmed today 211 small boat migrants crossed the Channel just yesterday. Meanwhile, more than 2,000 small boat migrants have arrived in the UK in a record week of illegal crossings, with hundreds more making that journey on Good Friday. GB News can reveal that so far today, 138 people have been brought to the Border Force Migrant Processing Centre at Dover Harbour. US President Donald Trump has suggested Buckingham Palace is setting a date for September for his second state visit to the UK. The president told reporters in the White House last night that he was invited by the King and the country, a great country. It comes after Sir Keir Starmer handed Mr Trump an invitation letter from the King in February during his visit to Washington. Mr Trump was hosted by the late Queen Elizabeth II during his previous three-day state visit in 2019, which took place during his first term in office. Traditionally, second-term US presidents are not offered a state visit and have instead been invited for tea or lunch with the monarch at Windsor Castle. Meanwhile, the Chancellor says she'll hold talks with the White House next week amid efforts to strike a UK-US trade deal, despite Donald Trump downplaying the likelihood of any imminent agreements. Britain hopes a deal can help soften the brunt of the US president's sweeping 10% tariffs on all goods imported to America, with The Telegraph reporting that officials in Washington believe an agreement could be weeks away. Rachel Reeves says active negotiations with the Americans are still ongoing. The US will abandon trying to broker a Russia-Ukraine peace deal within days unless there are clear signs a truce can be reached, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has warned. After meeting with the European leaders in Paris, Mr Rubio said, "We're not going to continue with this endeavour for weeks and months on end." Mr Rubio said Donald Trump was still interested in a deal but was willing to move on if there were no immediate signs of progress. The Kremlin has responded, saying Russia is committed to resolving this conflict, ensuring its own interests, and is open to dialogue. Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 and has placed a number of conditions on any potential ceasefire. Donald Trump promised during his election campaign to end the war within his first 24 hours in the White House. He moderated that claim on taking office, suggesting a deal by April or May. Elsewhere, a British couple were among the 4 people killed in a cable car crash near Naples in Italy. The mountain cable car cabin plunged to the ground after one of the cables supporting it snapped yesterday. A middle-aged man remains in a critical condition. 16 passengers were safely evacuated from the cabin that stopped in mid-air near the foot of the mountain. The UK Foreign Office said it was in touch with local authorities but has not confirmed the identities of the victims. The accident occurred just a week after the cable car, popular for its views of Mount Vesuvius and the Bay of Naples, reopened for the season. And millions of people are set to face disruption to their Easter travel plans this weekend due to major rail engineering works, strike action, heavy traffic and possible flooding. More than 300 engineering projects will be carried out by Network Rail across Britain between Good Friday and Easter Monday, prompting warnings for passengers to check their journeys in advance. The worst affected routes include those serving London Euston, where no trains will run to or from Milton Keynes on Saturday and Sunday. Platforms 1 to 8 at London Victoria will be shut throughout the bank holiday, with the South Eastern trains diverted to London Bridge or London Cannon Street. Planned industrial action at Gatwick could impact a small number of airlines at the airport. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me in half an hour.
Thank you, Tatiana. Excellent, as always. Now, more than 2,000 small boat migrants have arrived in Britain in a record week of illegal crossings, as 150 migrants crossed today on the Channel alone. What an unholy row for Keir Starmer this Easter weekend. And we're joined now to bring us fully up to speed is GBNews reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, yesterday we saw some astonishing pictures that Mark White got us of Sudanese nationals coming over brazenly, ploughing across the Channel in a way that people watching the show simply couldn't comprehend. And today, it's got worse. The numbers are through the roof, and terribly, there have been 2 fatalities. Brings us up to speed.
Yeah, so as you just heard, 2,000 people in a week, which is absolutely extraordinary. We're only in April. Those figures would be very high in the peak of summer. So, I mean, as far as a trend line goes, the government are going to be looking at that and thinking this is really bad news. Let's talk about those fatalities first. So we're playing some footage, or we will shortly, of members of the Coast Guard carrying the body of a migrant who died in the waters today up the gangway of Dover Harbour. Now, we don't actually know the cause of death of this migrant yet. Now, of course, you would assume drowning, right? But actually, because these boats are so crammed with people now, each dinghy is so overcrowded, actually people are suffocated, they're trampled on, some even have stab wounds and bruising because the migrants actually fight each other to get on these vessels. So we don't have any confirmation at this stage of the cause of death.
There have been incidents where women and children have been trampled to death by men who haven't paid, clambering to get aboard. So getting on is perilous, the journey itself is perilous, and as you say, this appears that the death happened somewhere in the Channel, came ashore, and then I believe there was a second death, Adam Cherry, in Dunkirk.
Yes, so what we understand is it's a woman of Sudanese nationality who had health problems. So at the moment we understand no evidence of third-party involvement has been discovered yet. A forensic examination will be conducted by a medical examiner to confirm the cause of death. So that's what we know at this time. But nonetheless, you know, absolutely extraordinary figures. And, 138 people brought to Dover today alone. You know, that figure may well rise by the time we finish this show. So just an absolute calamity. And the reason for this, we've talked about this on your show this week. The reason is there's no real deterrent. You know, the Rwanda scheme, OK, ultimately it sent a couple of volunteers off and it was stuck in a legal quagmire. But now this smash the gangs slogan, even if you assume that is possible at some point, it's clearly not working now. And if it takes 3 or 4 years or longer, you're seeing the consequences of this already. It's a whack-a-mole. I just think it's impossible. And you're seeing the consequences, like I said, every single day now as we approach summer.
I don't know if we've got any of that footage we can show from yesterday. Let's try and get some of that up. It was extraordinary in twofold. First of all, the brazen nature of how it's now been used as a TikTok viral marketing campaign. And so what's happening, Adam, and maybe this goes towards precipitating a death in the Channel, is that the dinghies are absolutely rammed. They're packed to bursting point. These craft aren't designed to last more than one crossing. And so they're playing with death all the time. And the trend, it seems now, as soon as the weather is calm, they're piling over 60, 70 plus people on a single craft.
Yeah, well, it's so profitable for the gangs. It's a marketing ploy. They don't care about the loss of life. And actually, I suppose the migrants themselves, if there is a deterrent, it is, of course, that it's a dangerous journey. But with 2,000 crossing in a week and 1 or 2 deaths, they think, well, this is worth trying because if I get there, I get 4-star accommodation. Again, we've seen the videos of this. I get the equivalent of private healthcare. I get fed. And there's a very little chance that I'm sent back. So they're willing to take that risk, even if it is dangerous in the first instance.
Now, I believe, Adam, there is a police statement. Is there in reference to that death, the one that happened in the Channel and then became our business in Dover?
Yeah, Kent Police. So they released a statement today saying Kent Police was called at 8:26 a.m. today after a border force patrol responded to a medical emergency on a small boat in the English Channel. A man has been pronounced deceased. Officers have launched an investigation to establish the circumstances leading to that man's death. As I said, we don't know at this point. The priority remains to establish the man's identity in order to notify his family, and officers are currently at Dover Lifeboat Station while initial inquiries are underway. So they have a forensics tent on the dock there, and that's where they brought the body ashore and were examining.
But even that, Adam, asks a lot of questions. A medical emergency on a small boat, so it seems like it's not potentially a drowning. Something's happened on that dinghy.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it could be an altercation, it could be a heart attack. We don't know.
We don't know.
But the point is, they're crammed so full of people. Yeah. It exacerbates the potential for disaster both at sea and on board the craft itself.
Yeah, of course. But as I said, the gangs don't care. It doesn't matter to them. It's so profitable. It's worth taking the risk.
Adam, let's talk about the politics of this. You know, last week I was joined by Lord Maurice Glassman. He's a Labour peer. He's old school Labour. He absolutely understands the red wall. He said to me, the Labour Party know they've got to tackle this. Oh, yeah. Or they'll go the same way as Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party. They couldn't stop the boats. Can the Labour Party smash the gangs?
Well, I mean, if you look at the evidence so far, it doesn't look like it. But you're right, number 10, no, this is a problem. Morgan McSweeney, the Downing Street Chief of Staff, absolutely telling his lieutenants, telling the party and the government, take this seriously, because this is one of the most important issues for voters. It's arguably one of the reasons why, amongst many, we can go into that, but why the Conservatives suffered so badly last time, because of lack of trust. And actually, again, we've talked about this previously, as soon as Rishi Sunak left number 10, he said it was a mistake to say, I will stop the boats, because that was an impossible task. And now, once the rubber has hit the road, this government are feeling the same pressure.
And Adam, when you and I were on the show earlier this week, we did that poll, is Britain broken? 68% of Britons said yes, Britain is broken. The top issue by a country mile was immigration. 53% said it was the most pressing concern for them. And there is no greater visible breach of our borders than this stuff we see happening every single day now.
Yeah, so again, like we said, Labour know this, and so they've tried to counter it by offering tangible evidence of their action on the border. So
there have been some deportations.
There have been some deportations. Yeah. And they want to show footage of that. They want to show footage of raids to prove that they take it seriously.
Shops.
Yeah, all of that. Fine. But it's completely undermined by the data we see here and unfortunately the fatalities and the sheer numbers and the footage from the gangs themselves. It completely wipes all of that progress away.
And I wonder if the Labour Party will be pondering this over the Easter recess, because, as you said, Adam Cherry, if it's in April, this is set to continue for the entire season. Sometimes that can go way into September.
Yeah. I mean, so the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, basically conceded this and said, as soon as the weather improves, this will get worse. Well, like I said, we're only in April. Can you imagine what it's like when it's 30 degrees in July?
Adam Cherry, thank you very, very much for bringing us up to speed there. And 2 fatalities and a perilous situation continues. An unholy mess for the government. Thank you very much, Adam Cherry. Now, moving on, the Metropolitan Police has come under fire once again, this time for organising an Easter egg hunt for officers at one of London's major counter-terrorism hubs. So as crime rates soar, it seems that the force is out catching eggs and not jihadis. Well, join us now is the retired Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville. Mike, first of all, happy Easter. Secondly, I bet you choked on your Easter egg when you read... Secondly, Mike, well, first of all, happy Easter. We got you now. Secondly, I bet you choked on your Easter egg when you read this nonsense, didn't you?
I did, and this has come to light. The counter-terrorism officers are some of the most professional detectives we have. They really do prevent attacks on the United Kingdom and keep us safe. They're good people. But it's somebody, obviously, in the counter-terrorism command has thought this is nonsense because they've revealed it. How does this come to light? It's come to light because a detective has seen this and thought, this is not what we're doing. And if you look at the Metropolitan Police, every police force is inspected every 2 or 3 years. And out of the 8 categories, the Metropolitan Police were judged to be inadequate in 7 of them. And so this just sends the wrong message to the public that the police are messing around doing these things when 1% of thefts are solved and 5% of burglaries are solved. It isn't good enough, Martin. It just sends the wrong message.
Mike's gone. Mike, you keep going. Mike never keeps going to the dark side there. We're going to move on. I want to pick this up with Adam Cherry back here in the studio. Let's look on the bright side. At least the Metropolitan Police Force are celebrating Easter. I mean, they might have deemed it Islamophobic or something, or something that the country shouldn't be marking. But on a serious point, you know, we are at the point now where people are losing all faith in burglaries being solved. You get a crime reference number if your phone gets nicked. No one's bothered about trying to apprehend people.
Yeah, it's happened to me. I had my phone nicked, and then the next day, here's your crime reference number. I was like, well, but hold on, I can track this guy. Anyway, that's by the by. But the point is a serious one.
And if you go to the coppers and go, look, here's my phone. Look, I've tracked it. They don't want to know. They're not allowed to go in. 8 out of 10 shoplifting incidents aren't sorted out. Street crime's through the roof. Knife crime is through the roof. Antisocial behaviour is through the roof.
And they're cutting numbers, don't forget, in the Metropolitan Police.
And they're doing this nonsense.
Yeah. So they're cutting numbers whilst at the same time. Look, it's all about optics, isn't it? You have to be seen to be doing the job properly, and if you do this sort of stuff, even if it in reality takes away a small number of resources, which I'm sure they will argue, people just aren't having their crimes solved, and it breaks down trust in institutions. It breaks down. It's like a violation of the social contract, basically. It's really quite bad. And also, at the same time as the politics of this, they're vowing to put more bobbies on the beat. How many times have we heard that? We've been hearing that for decades. I don't know about where you live, Adam. I see Santa more often than I see a bobby on the beat. Seriously, at least I see Santa once a year. I haven't seen a copper all year. I see them going through in their cars. I see them overhead in whirly-birds. I don't see them on the ground walking about. Yeah, so the government announced in the last week or so they want to up the number of neighbourhood policing and number of neighbourhood patrols in busy, crime-ridden areas. Well, the proof will be in the pudding, because, of course, that's absolutely essential. We've discussed this on the show. Best way to crack down on crime isn't necessarily just with higher sentences, although that's part of the equation. Really is thinking you're going to get caught in the first place. If you don't think you're going to get caught because these guys are doing Easter egg hunts or whatever it is, then crime's going to get worse. Are we being totally curmudgeonly here? I mean, are coppers allowed a bit of a break-off? They're allowed a bit of chocolate. It's worth pointing out the way their children weren't allowed. It was an adults-only Easter egg hunt, which I think is a bit odd. But seriously, should they really be, on the taxpayers' dollar, be sniffing around for cream eggs in a hedge? I mean, they can do what they like in their own time, I suppose, can't they? We don't need to be doing this. This is the work activity. Yeah, well... So as mugs are paying for it. That's my point. I would argue it's perhaps not the best use of taxpayer funds, particularly given the statistics you've just read out with regards to solving the number of crimes in this country. Yeah, well, there we go. Our police hunting Easter eggs, and the rest of us just think they're a bit of a flake. Sorry. Adam Sherry, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Now, we've got a police statement to read out here, and it's this. The police insist that every day our officers work around the clock to keep London safe, and they will always prioritise urgent jobs and core policing work. So maybe we are being harsh. Maybe they do deserve a little Easter break. Happy Easter, boys in blue. Now, next, should we bring back our pits? They might save our steel. Is it time to dig British coal to power British steel? My dad was a coal miner. You can probably guess my take on this. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here
We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Time is 3:23 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, British steel bosses have admitted that UK coal could fire its blast furnaces. And that's according to the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. Now, this adds pressure, of course, onto Ed Miliband over the blocking of a new Cumbrian coal mine at Whitehaven. So here's today's big debate. Should we bring back the pits? Well, join me now is the leader of the Climate Party, Ed Gemmell, and the director of Net Zero Watch, Andrew Montfort. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'm going to start with Ed Gemmell. Ed, suddenly the British government is pro-blast furnaces. Blast furnaces need coking coal. We have coking coal in Whitehaven. We're importing it from Japan, 50,000 tonnes of the stuff at a price of 7 million quid. And that takes a tonne of dirty diesel oil to even get it to our place in the first place. It used to be a cliche, selling coal to Newcastle. Now it's our energy policy. That's madness. Surely it's time to dig British coal.
I mean, we shouldn't be digging British coal. What we should be doing is doing clean steel and clean production in this country. We're a decade off the development that's going on in other countries. We're falling behind them, and we're going to be losing money in the future. And Richard Tice's madcap stuff, when he's talking about us now investing in, coke ovens, investing in, upgrading the blast furnaces at 200 million quid each. It's spending money. It's sending more money after bad money. We need to invest in the future. Look, we've got H2 Steel in Sweden now getting ready to produce within about a year's time 2.5 million tonnes of 95% decarbonised green steel, virgin steel, that'll be ready for the future. They've taken 1.5 million tonnes in forward orders from others to get it going, and they're going to double that production capacity within 5 years, which will be like the entire capacity of the British industry in steel when we get back to 2023. It's nuts for us to do this aggressive stuff.
Ed, that sounds great, but it's in Sweden. Andrew Montfort, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. We should be digging British coal. Blast furnaces are the only way to make this the high strength steel that is needed for things like warships and rail tracks. You can make steel with arc furnaces. That probably has no future in the UK because our electricity is so expensive. We have the most expensive electricity in the developed world. So, yeah, we need to keep blast furnaces as a matter of national security. And for that, we need coal. The idea that we should be importing the coals is bonkers. I mean, obviously, as you said, I mean, it's more emissions, but also all the peripheral benefits of digging it up go to other countries. So all the jobs, all the investment, all the tax revenues go overseas. Why would you want to do that? It's absolutely insane. But this is an issue across the net zero thing. We have these politicians who are trying to virtue signal but ignoring our own resources as a result. So we're not, we're trying. Ed Miliband's trying to close down the North Sea. We're refusing to do coal. We're not doing shale gas. We're not doing coal bed methane. It's madness.
Ed Gamble, back to you. Aside from the ideological position of net zero, what about jobs? We've been promised clean, green jobs. Where are they? There's no sign of a single job on the horizon that I can see. Well, I remember back in the day when the coal mines were open, the communities prospered. Everybody had full employment, from the butchers, the paper shop, the entire community. Those days could return to our industrial heartlands if net zero got out of the way.
Those days can't return. That's the past. Even if we get it back now for a year or two, we're only getting it back for a year or two. You just talked about jobs, and Andrew completely ignored me talking about an industrial strategy to grow our industry with the industries of the future. I mean, H2 Steel, and it's producing steel using hydrogen, not using coal and coke, and it's producing 10,000 jobs. We're behind the times. And if we go and regress back to getting the coal out of the ground, back to doing our steel in a dirty way, we're simply sinking our money and we will never get it back. It's madness. Okay. We've got to grip the thing and go forwards.
Okay, Ed, we have to leave it there. Hang on, the point, gentlemen, hang on a sec, let me have a quick go. The point with this, aside from the ideological viewpoint, I'm talking about jobs and prosperity. Ed Gamble, thank you for joining us. We're going to have to leave it there. What I'm talking about here is jobs and prosperity. And, if these thousands and thousands of clean, green jobs turn up, I'm sure if they turn up in the right places, in the deindustrialised heartlands of Britain, the coal belts, the places where the steel belts used to be, the northern towns, the towns of the Midlands, if those jobs go there, then great. But you see, that hasn't happened. If it has happened, I've completely missed it. It's always tomorrow. It's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow in terms of these jobs, whereas Whitehaven promised 500 very well-paid local jobs, and that was just at the coalface and on the mine itself. And that would have, of course, precipitated much more prosperity in the local community. It's money where tax would be paid in Britain. It's jobs created in Britain, not outsourced, not shipped around the world. Let's get back to Andrew Montford now. And isn't that the point? We seem to have ideological decisions made by metropolitan politicians who don't really understand the working classes, and that's been part of the deindustrialisation of Britain. Those communities never quite recovered. And, if you ask people, because I do, I'm from Nottinghamshire, if you ask people in these areas, do you want the pits back? Do you want jobs back? The answer is almost resounding yes.
Absolutely. We've had this myth put around for years that there are going to be all these marvellous green jobs. But when you think about it, can you name a big employer, someone who has generated a lot of green jobs? It's really hard to think of anybody who employs large numbers of people in the way that, you could point at British Coal 25 years ago and say, 40 years ago perhaps, and say, they employed tens of thousands. There's nobody like that in the green jobs market, because all the jobs are in China or the Middle East or wherever. They are just not here because they are making things using coal. So they have cheap energy, so the jobs go where the cheap energy is. We've got expensive energy, so it doesn't happen. If we want to see our industrial heartlands regenerate, we're going to need to get back to cheap energy, and that means ditching what Mr. Cameron memorably called the green crap.
And Andrew, may I ask you can I table a point here? We've seen this week the trans ideology has been defeated in the courts. Finally, this ideology has been exposed as anti-scientific. Legally and scientifically, a man can never be a woman and vice versa. Do you think we might get to a point where enough people are aware of the fact net zero is so expensive, it's not creating jobs, it's prospering, it's hindering Britain's prosperity, and more to the point, we're offshoring our guilt, we're having dirty energy burning in places like China so that we have a clean conscience in Britain. Are people waking up to this, or do you feel that the direction of travel is that net zero is now a part of the fabric of the West?
No, the direction of travel has definitely changed. Since the last general election, when we got some Reform MPs into Parliament. The conversation has changed because now we have voices who can't be silenced. There's a lot of parallels, I think, between the gender recognition thing and the climate thing, in that debate has been silenced for 20 years. Immigration is another example. Now things are starting to change. We've said for a long time that we think that the conversation will change once the economic pain gets really bad, and that's where we are now. And we can see there was quite a good leader article in the Times today suggesting that actually Labour are going to have to change direction on this because they are in real trouble politically if they don't change direction. And I think Mr. Miliband is going to have to get sidelined.
Andrew, and also on this point, it's worth bringing back, if we can, that picture of the mine at Whitehaven, because you'll notice it's totally enshrouded in black plastic. It's a huge structure. And the reason they're doing that is because it contains all of the dust, it contains all of the noise, and the actual working practice underground is light years ahead of where we were, even when the pits finally wound down in the late 1990s, the last of the pits in Britain. And the coal can be burned in a much more efficient way if you adapt your blast furnaces. So the point I'm trying to make is the way that we used to produce and dig and burn coal and make steel has moved on anyway, in the same way that cars are much cleaner burning than they were. It's like the message we constantly get is from the bad old days, but the technology has moved on. But it just seems to be there's a reluctance to embrace that technology because of ideology.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very much ideology that is getting in the way here. And yeah, we need our politicians to stop behaving, if you like student politicians and going around trying to make big gestures and start to think much more rationally about what goes on. And yes, coal is a lot cleaner than it was. And the idea that we're going to have our cities covered in coal dust by these things now is a nonsense. That we have pollution directives that stop anything really coming out of the chimney. So it's a much cleaner technology, and I think we are, in terms of national security, going to have to look at coal for energy generation as well, for power stations, simply because coal is very secure in a way that gas, drilled offshore isn't.
Andrew Moffat, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We seem to run out of time. And of course, everybody wants clean energy, everyone wants clean air, but we also want a fair chance for the future. Now, a government spokesman has said the Labour government is focused on securing our steel industry to protect British jobs and British workers. Whitehaven would not have prevented the situation British Steel has faced, and those suggesting otherwise are wrong. And I need to add this. We have a local election graphic because Ed Gemmell, who you heard from earlier, is running as a local councillor in the Buckinghamshire election as an independent, and also running are Matthew James Dean, Reform UK, Mimi Harker, Conservative Party, Dominic McFarlane, Liberal Democrats, Catherine Joan Oliver, Conservative Party, John Jeffrey Rhodes, Reform UK, Robert James Steenkamp from the Liberal Democrats. And lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including a friend of the show and ex-SAS legend Matthew Hellier has a special message for you at home as he journeys through Belize with injured, heroic veterans. That's next. First, here's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you very much and good afternoon. The top stories. A man has died trying to cross the English Channel. The migrant's body was brought to Dover Harbour along with dozens of other migrants who were taken off a small boat in the middle of the Channel early this morning. Border Force disembarked 51 migrants before the rescue vessel moved position to the nearby Dover RNLI station. The cause of this latest migrants' tragedy is not yet known. A police spokesperson said officers have launched an investigation to establish the circumstances leading to his death. At least 225 migrants have lost their lives in the Channel since the small boats crisis began in 2018. Home Office official figures confirmed 211 small boat migrants crossed the Channel yesterday. Meanwhile, more than 2,000 small boat migrants have arrived in the UK in a record week of illegal crossings, with hundreds more making the journey today. GB News can reveal that so far today, 138 people have been brought to the Border Force Migrant Processing Centre at Dover Harbour. The Chancellor says she'll hold talks with the White House next week amid efforts to strike a UK-US trade deal, despite Donald Trump downplaying the likelihood of any imminent agreements. Britain hopes a deal can help soften the brunt of the US president's sweeping 10% tariffs on all goods imported to America, with The Telegraph reporting that officials in Washington believe an agreement could be weeks away. Rachel Reeves says active negotiations with the Americans are still ongoing. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me at 4 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Motorists should be aware of emergency work on the A55 between Junction 23 Landulas and Junction 23A Pensarn, causing one lane to be closed with a speed limit of 40 miles per hour. In Northumberland, congestion is occurring on the A1 northbound between junctions with the A697 and the A1068. Drivers should anticipate delays until 5:25 this evening. There is a road traffic collision on the M1 northbound between Junction 14 and Junction 15 in Milton Keynes, resulting in one of 4 lanes closed with conditions expected to return to normal by 5:56. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
People sometimes think if someone is homeless, they're not trying for work, or I mean, you clearly have been.
Yes,
but
yes.
just not getting enough to actually be able
That's
to
the thing.
fund what's so expensive.
When you're self-employed, anyone who's self-employed will understand me that it's got its moments of being busy and quieter.
And have you experienced that stigma of being homeless and not having anywhere to call home?
Yes, I definitely have. I felt it through losing friends. I've realised who my true people are, I would say. It's crazy how humanity still exists. More recently than not, I put a post out saying I didn't have anywhere to go one of the nights. And I was in the council the next day and I needed to be in Windsor because the council are nearby. And a couple of people reached out that I didn't even know, a couple, and I stayed at theirs. And they even give me a warm meal. So humanity does exist. And but where's my friends in all this, you know?
Yeah.
A few friends have stepped up a little bit more now and realised this has, you know, become a problem. When they've seen me and actually spoke to me properly and realised this is what I'm going through, they've helped me and let me stay on the sofa or, you know, but it's all temporary.
Just briefly, what about charities in all of this? Are they able to help?
Crisis and Shelter, I've just gone around in circles with. I haven't got any direct help so much. Not been able to get through to anyone. I've wrote to them, I've emailed them, I've Instagrammed them. But the only charity that has helped me, and it's a kind of an unusual one, is Dogs Trust.
Oh, right.
Because I walk dogs, I've been in contact with them to help the homeless dogs get rehomed. I was supporting them. And then all of a sudden they've pulled me in and said, look, you should come down to the Newbury Dogs Trust in Berkshire. We can support you. We have this together through homelessness.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 4 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News on this beautiful Easter Friday. Now, a huge friend of the show and the ex-SAS legend Matthew Hellier has sent a very special video through to myself and to you, the GB News viewers, as he journeys through Belize with injured veterans in honour of the 80th anniversary of VE Day. Let's take a look.
Hey, Martin, viewers, for VE Day 80, the Pilgrim Bandits charity are supporting veterans. We've now taken all of our military veterans, the injured guys and girls, to Belize in just a commemoration of all our veterans that have led us this way and give us the freedom to do what we want. We've paddled down the Mojo River, which is on the borders of Belize and Guatemala, and we're now finishing off our dive expedition where we have all of our injured veterans and all of our supporters. We are here just to show unity and support to all of our veterans, from the Pilgrim Bandits to our amazing community and VE Day 80. Thank you very much, and we'll see you when we get back home. God bless.
That's Matthew Hellyer there and the legends in Belize. And apologies there for the blowing in the background. They are, of course, aboard a boat in Belize. That's called The Wind. But apologies if that was hurting your ears at home. No, they're an inspiring charity, Pilgrim Bandits. A lot of those boys that were in that trip and their other charity work, they've been physically injured. Some of their limbs blown off. They've been very badly hurt going to war for Queen and King and country. You can see them here on boating exercises, going over waterfalls in Belize, pushing their fear, getting their lives back. They rebuild through camaraderie. A lot of these boys, of course, have PTSD, mental health issues, and they get them together. They get the team back together. You can see here this guy has been injured. I think he's got issue with his legs. And they just rebuild their confidence, they rebuild their will to live. It's an incredible charity, the work they do. And, you know, thank you to Matthew Hellyer for sending that message to us. You know, he does a huge amount of work, and we're going to get him back on the show as we approach VE Day. He came into the studio before and he brought a 100-year-old World War II D-Day veteran in on his 100th birthday. Matthew Hellyer is coming back in on the 22nd of April. I believe that is that Tuesday. He's bringing another veteran of D-Day into the studio to celebrate his birthday. I can't wait to share his story. It's so important that we commemorate and remember the fallen, those who survived. There are less than 200, can you believe that now? Less than 200 surviving World War II veterans, I understand. And we did an article yesterday with Johnny Gallagher from the London Black Cab Taxi, and their charity. They are taking people to Normandy. They've got a fundraiser on the go, hoping to raise £1 million. There's so much great work going on in there to try and help our veterans to get to those events, physically frail. We had Dorothea in the studio yesterday, a 100-year-old former Wren, a woman who was shining lights in the sky on D-Day itself, keeping Britain safe. These people are astonishing. They're absolutely incredible. Our finest ever generation. All of this charity work is feeding into building up now to VE Day 80th anniversary, and of course we'll do all our best on GB News to make sure we give that the respect and the courtesy that it deserves. Once again, thank you to Matthew Hellyer, and we'll see you on the other side, Captain. See you back soon. Now, if you're searching some holiday sun, perhaps try Belize. Well, here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The changeable weather across southern parts of Europe continues as we go into the weekend. Starting off looking in the east, and a fair few showers across the eastern parts of Greece into Bulgaria, also across parts of Montenegro and Croatia too. Mostly dry though for Italy. Heavy rain and strong winds pushing in across parts of Portugal and Spain. Meanwhile, the Canary Islands seeing a few spots of rain perhaps. A largely dry picture as we go into the beginning of next week, however. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Still to come, oh my God, the Labour Party battering our chippies. Join me next as I took into a platter a monster-sized wedge of cod plus the food of champions, mushy peas and curry sauce at the same time. You heard it first. That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, a very good afternoon to you. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. Has been quite a mixed start to this long Easter weekend. Those out towards the east generally faring quite well, but further towards the west we've got low pressure in charge, and this has been bringing outbreaks of rain for Western England, Wales, Northern Ireland, increasingly into parts of Scotland as well. There are rain warnings in force for some of these western regions, so do take care if you're travelling over the next 24 hours because some delays to your journeys are possible. With all the rain and the clouds and a quite noticeable breeze as well, it is going to be a mild night though, so temperatures generally ranging between 7 and 10 degrees Celsius. As we kick off Saturday then, this east-west split is still going to be in play. So some further heavy pulses of rain likely for the Banai Brecaniog, parts of the higher ground of southwest England over towards Dorset and Hampshire as well. The Mourne and Antrim mountains of Northern Ireland also seeing a fair amount of rain building up as well, and it will eventually push a little bit further northwards into other areas of Scotland. A reasonable amount of clouds still in the east, but at least drier to start off Saturday here, and hopefully into the afternoon there will be an increasing amount of brighter spells developing for those eastern regions as well. And the afternoon will also be an improving picture for Wales, parts of southwest England as the rain does begin to ease, but it's likely to remain fairly damp and dreary across much of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. Generally a cooler day than today all round, particularly in the east where we do have this North Sea breeze coming in that will peg the temperatures back along those coastal districts, around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius overall. As we head into the evening then, that rain in the north will continue to steadily clear its way off, and then into Sunday, that is generally looking like the better day of the Easter weekend overall. A good number of bright sunny spells eventually making their way through, but on Monday we're likely to see the showers returning once again, and that slightly changeable theme will be continuing as we head throughout the rest of next week. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Headliners on GB News 11 PM every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 PM and 5 AM as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 to 4 and I'm hungry. It's Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, if you're tucking into a Good Friday fish supper tonight, well, enjoy it while you can, because British chippies are getting battered. And that's thanks to the perfect storm of European Union cod quotas and Labour's national inheritance hike. Well, to discuss this further, I'm now joined by the king of the chippies, the president of the National Federation of Fish Fryers, Andrew Crook. He's coming soon. Before that, here is my fish supper. I've got a fish supper here. I'll put it down for you. Now, this might offend some. I'm not bothered. This is the way I take it. Mushy peas. Right, that's a no-brainer. Mushy peas goes on top. Bosh. But look, this is where I might divide the nation. Curry sauce. Double drop. Bosh. Look at that. So you get both at the same time. I'm going to take a bang of this. I'm just going to have the curry sauce and a sec on its own. I like to drink that. Oh, my God. Curry sauce is just heaven. Right, now, I'm telling you, don't mock it until you've tried it. Curry sauce and mushy peas. It's a double drop. Let's go for that. It looks like it's been ran over. I'm not bothered. I'm telling you, lads, ladies, mushy peas and curry sauce. On their own, they're heavenly. Together, they're out of this world. Can you just go to the... we can't end the hour yet, can we? I'm just going to keep eating for a minute. Now then, please indulge me. I've been waiting all day for that. I missed my lunch. On a serious point, this is a serious story. Some fish and chip shops have been charging £15 for cod and chips because cod is now so expensive because of European Union quotas. Ostensibly what's happening is since we Brexited, or rather didn't, we sold a lot of our cod quotas to other countries, to Spain, to France. So they've been taking our cod in industrial-sized amounts, leaving scant amount left for us. They're getting harder to catch they're smaller, and we have fewer fishing vessels. On top of that, it costs a bomb to fry the stuff because we have the most expensive electricity in the Western world, and gas is through the roof. So it costs a bomb to get the stuff hot, it costs a bomb to catch it, if you can at all. And on top of that, there's the national insurance hike, and there's the minimum wage hike. So what you got there is literally the perfect storm, which is battering our fish and chip shops. There's somebody doing a bit of frying. I'm going to do a bit of eating, and I want you to think about this, about the pleasures. Of curry sauce and mushy peas at the same time. You've got to try it. You haven't lived. Can we just end the show and I'll just carry on eating, or? Oh. Now, we're trying to get hold there of Andrew Cook, the president of the National Federation of Fish Fryers. We had a technical issue. Perhaps he dropped his camera in the deep fryer. It might drop on. It might catch on in Scotland. Deep fried iPhone. Maybe his signal got fried. Maybe got frazzled. But look, a lot of you have been getting in touch about this. Rocky knows his stuff. Listen to this. I'm with you, Martin. Absolutely delicious. Yes. Loads of exclamation marks there. Rocky is a man who likes the combination of curry sauce and mushy peas, both at the same time. Cannot be beaten. Let's move on to Claire. Claire says this. Yes, Martin. Yes, Martin. Yes. Claire's getting very excited by this fish supper. It is Easter Friday. Yummy, 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 she says. Brett says this. Good man. Food is there for the enjoying. It doesn't need to look pretty. Just taste nice. Love it, Martin. You're my kind of bloke. That's Wendy. Paul says, wow, he was certainly enjoying that food. Lucia says, not curry sauce with fish and chips, Martin. You are a total Philistine. Lucia, not the first time I've heard that. Martin, normally I'll be with you all the way, but this was absolutely ridiculous. You are insane. You've lost the plot. Look, loads more coming up in the next hour. We're crossing live to the Vatican as US Deputy President J.D. Vance is to attend the Good Friday service over there after clashing with the Pope over immigration policy. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, a very good afternoon to you. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. It's been quite a mixed start to this long Easter weekend. Those out towards the east generally faring quite well, but further towards the west we've got low pressure in charge, and this has been bringing outbreaks of rain for Western England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and increasingly into parts of Scotland as well. There are rain warnings in force for some of these western regions, so do take care if you're travelling over the next 24 hours because some delays to your journeys are possible. With all the rain and the clouds and a quite noticeable breeze as well, it is going to be a mild night though, so temperatures generally ranging between 7 and 10 degrees Celsius. As we kick off Saturday then, this east-west split is still going to be in play, so some further heavy pulses of rain likely for the Bannow Bracaniog, parts of the higher ground of southwest England over towards Dorset and Hampshire as well. The Mourne and Antrim mountains of Northern Ireland also seeing a fair amount of rain building up as well, and it will eventually push a little bit further northwards into other areas of Scotland. A reasonable amount of clouds still in the east, but at least drier to start off Saturday here, and hopefully into the afternoon there will be an increasing amount of brighter spells developing for those eastern regions as well. And the afternoon will also be an improving picture for Wales, parts of southwest England as the rain does begin to ease, but it's likely to remain fairly damp and dreary across much of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. Generally a cooler day than today all round, particularly in the east where we do have this North Sea breeze coming in that will peg the temperatures back along those coastal districts around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius overall. As we head into the evening then, that rain in the north will continue to steadily clear its way off, and then into Sunday, that is generally looking like the better day of the Easter weekend overall. A good number of bright sunny spells eventually making their way through, but on Monday we're likely to see the showers returning once again, and that slightly changeable theme will be continuing as we head throughout the rest of next week. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the A55, between Junction 23 Landulas and Junction 23A Pensarn, one lane is closed due to emergency work, with a speed limit of 40 miles per hour causing slow traffic. In Lancashire, the M6 northbound is experiencing congestion between Junction 28 and Junction 30, with delays of 15 minutes expected to ease between 4:45 and 5 this afternoon. In Milton Keynes, a road traffic collision on the M1 northbound between Junction 14 and Junction 15 has closed one lane. Expect normal traffic between 6:15 and 6:30 this evening. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you, and I hope you're having a wonderful Easter Friday. It's 4 p.m, and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, we have some breaking news. More than 2,000 small boat migrants have now arrived in Britain in a record single week of illegal crossings. Now that is an unholy row for Keir Starmer on Good Friday. And in the week, the Supreme Court ruled that biological sex trumps gender identity. Today, GB News is asking the big questions. Is it time to ban gender-neutral toilets? Is it time to kick trans ideology out of schools and indeed sports? And is it time for men and boys to reclaim their spaces? Should we make the Boy Scouts, the Scouts, the Boy Scouts again? And what about kicking women out of men's clubs? Were men the big losers in the equality war? And Ed Miliband, Ed Davey and Greenpeace plan to kill the Whitehaven coal mine. But Reform Deputy Leader Richard Tice claims British coal is among the best in the world and could and should be used to power the Scunthorpe blast furnaces at the steelworks. Mr Tice will join me on the show and we'll ask the big question. Is it time to reopen the pits and give coal and not dole to Britain's forgotten industrial heartlands? Now, if you're a pensioner and you're about to put that Easter egg down, then stop, because new advice suggests that buffer weight for OAPs, that's gaining a few pounds, is actually good for you. An extra few pounds of padding helps to build muscle strength and it cushions the falls. Hurrah! Tuck into that Easter egg right now. And also in this hour, we'll be crossing live to the Vatican as US Deputy President J.D. Vance is in the congregation for the Good Friday service there. And that's after he clashed with the Pope over immigration. Welcome to the show. I hope you're having a magnificent Easter as you ponder the meaning of what it all is about. Because Easter isn't just about eggs, it's about remembering Jesus and God on this special day. Do you think that that's being eroded by the obsession, perhaps, with celebrating other cultures? Well, it's Easter. So grab yourself an Easter egg, get a cup of tea, sit back and enjoy the rest of the show. I'm here with you until 6 o'clock. Let me know what you're thinking about this Easter. Get in touch usual ways, gbnews.com/your say. But now it's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories: a small boat migrant has died in the English Channel this morning as hundreds more attempt to cross to the UK. The migrant's body was brought to Dover Harbour along with dozens of other migrants who were taken off a small boat in the middle of the Channel around 7 a.m. Border Force disembarked 51 migrants before the rescue vessel Typhoon moved position to the nearby Dover RNLI station. The cause of this latest migrant tragedy is still not known. At least 225 migrants have lost their lives in the Channel since the small boat crisis began in 2018. Home Office official figures confirmed 211 small boat migrants crossed the Channel yesterday. Meanwhile, more than 2,000 small boat migrants have arrived in the UK in a record week of illegal crossings, with hundreds more making that journey. GB News can reveal so far 138 people have been brought to that Border Force Migrant Processing Centre at Dover Harbour. In other news, US President Donald Trump has suggested Buckingham Palace is setting a date for September for his second state visit to the UK. The president told reporters in the White House last night that he was invited by the King and the country, a great country. It comes after the Prime Minister handed Mr Trump an invitation letter from King Charles in February during his visit to Washington. Trump was hosted by the late Queen Elizabeth II during his previous three-day state visit, which took place during his first term in office in 2019. Traditionally, second-term US presidents are not offered a state visit and have instead been invited for tea or lunch with the monarch at Windsor Castle. Meanwhile, the Chancellor says she will hold talks with the White House next week amid efforts to strike a UK-US trade deal, despite Donald Trump downplaying the likelihood of any imminent agreements. Britain hopes the deal can help soften the brunt of the US president's sweeping 10% tariffs on all goods imported to America, with The Telegraph reporting officials in Washington believe an agreement could be weeks away. Rachel Reeves says active negotiations with the Americans are still ongoing. US President Donald Trump will walk away from trying to broker a Russia-Ukraine peace deal within days unless there are clear signs a deal can be done, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio warns. After meeting with European leaders in Paris yesterday, Mr Rubio said, "We're not going to continue with this endeavour for weeks and months on end." Mr Rubio said Mr Trump was still interested in a deal but was willing to move on if there were no immediate signs of progress. The Kremlin has responded, saying Russia is committed to resolving this conflict, ensuring its own interests, and is open to dialogue. Donald Trump promised during his election campaign to end the war within his first 24 hours in the White House. He moderated that claim on taking office, suggesting a deal by April or May as obstacles mounted. Two British tourists are among 4 people killed after a cable car snapped near Naples in Italy. A middle-aged man remains in a critical condition following the accident. 16 passengers were safely evacuated from a cabin that stopped in mid-air near the foot of the mountain. It's understood rescue operations were hampered by fog and high winds. The accident occurred just a week after the cable car, popular for its views of Mount Vesuvius and the Bay of Naples, reopened for the season. Now, the dark chocolate version of Toblerone's most popular bar has been discontinued after nearly 6 decades on the shelves. Sweet treats manufacturer Mondelez International confirmed in a statement that its 360-gram dark chocolate bar would no longer be sold in the UK. The company said it understood the difficult decision may be disappointing for some consumers. It attributed the discontinuation to changing tastes and growing its business, adding it continuously adapts its range and continues to invest in Toblerone. The original Toblerone bar was first invented in 1908 with a dark chocolate version containing 50% cocoa released in 1969. And millions of people are set to face disruption to their Easter travel plans this weekend due to major rail engineering works, strike action, heavy traffic and possible flooding. More than 300 engineering projects will be carried out by Network Rail across Britain between Good Friday and Easter Monday, prompting warnings for passengers to check their journeys in advance. The worst affected routes include those serving London Euston, where no trains will run to or from Milton Keynes on Saturday and Sunday. Platforms 1 to 8 at London Victoria will be shut throughout the bank holiday, with southeastern trains diverted to London Bridge or Cannon Street. Planned industrial action at Gatwick Airport could impact a small number of airlines. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news from me in half an hour.
Thank you. Now let's cross back live to the Vatican as the US Deputy President J.D. Vance is in the congregation for the Good Friday service there. And that's after he clashed with the Pope over immigration. There we go. There's the VP at the Vatican. Absolutely magnificent scenes. Like I say, he did lock horns with the Pontiff on immigration, but nevertheless, that doesn't get in the way of this magnificent Easter service. Beautiful optics. OK. Let's come back to Britain now. Some more sobering news, because more than 2,000 small boats migrants have arrived in Britain in a record single week of illegal crossings, as 150 migrants crossed the Channel this morning. Well, joining me now is GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, welcome back to the show. So, an unholy mess for the Prime Minister at Easter. 2,000 in a single week, a record number, and we have 2 fatalities, one in the Channel and one in Dunkirk. Bring us up to speed with the numbers.
OK, so as you said, 2,000 crossing in the last week, which is unbelievably high, given it would be high in the peak of summer. It's unbelievable in April, and a really bad signal for where we're heading in the next couple of months. So far, provisional figures, GB News provisional figures, show we have 9,237 people crossing in the first 4 months of this year, 78 deaths last year. So these numbers are going up quite rapidly ever since the July election. Frankly, ever since the Rwanda scheme was scrapped, it seems there's a direct correlation between those numbers going up. And you mentioned those 2 fatalities as well, so we'll just cover those very quickly. So the first one was discovered in the waters. We don't know the cause of death of this migrant at this time. Kent police have released a statement saying they were called at 8:26 a.m. After a border force patrol responded to a medical emergency on a small boat in the English Channel. A man has been pronounced deceased. Officers have launched an investigation to establish the circumstances leading to the man's death, and the priority remains to establish the man's identity in order to notify his family. Now, obviously, you would think, well, it must be drowning, but actually, as we discussed earlier, Martin, the problem is these small boats are now so packed. You often get suffocation and stabbing and attacks between the migrants. So it's not entirely clear what's happened there.
I think the giveaway statement from Kent Police here is a medical emergency on a small boat, on the boat. So this wasn't a drowning, doesn't appear. It's an emergency on the boat. Now, that could be a cardiac arrest, it could be an attack. We don't know. But the point is, we have seen a lot of incidents where women and children even have been trampled to death, killed, as those who haven't paid their way clamber aboard illegal craft at Calais. People are dying and they're getting shoved overboard. The craft themselves are trembling. Notice this week in particular, Adam, Jerry, more and more people crammed onto a single craft at a time, 60, 70 plus on craft that aren't designed to last more than one crossing. It's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, and as we've discussed previously, it's such a lucrative scheme for these gangs. They don't really care how many people are on these vessels, and actually those migrants themselves, OK, there's a deterrent that it's dangerous and you might get injured, but it's worth taking that risk, because if you get here, it's very unlikely you're sent back, and you might end up in 4-star accommodation, you might get private healthcare or the equivalent, you get food and so on. So it's a journey that they're willing to take, knowing those risks, and therefore it's getting worse, and therefore as you look to the summer months when the calmer weather comes along, even calmer than it is now, this is going to be a real problem. Smash the gangs, fine, but that's proving to be very, very difficult, and with the absence of an immediate deterrent, it looks like it's getting worse rather than better.
I'd like to bring in somebody else who's in the studio now, my next guest. Rafe Hadel-Manku is here for another debate in a moment. But, Rafe, I know you talk a lot about immigration, illegal immigration and what it means. And I want to ask you quite simply, this is an unholy mess. Rishi Sunak couldn't stop the boats, no more than King Canute could stop the tide. The Labour regime clearly aren't smashing the gangs. How do we stop this unholy mess?
Well, it's very clear. Well, as your colleague Matt Goodwin has said, there's no point in smashing the gangs. It's like a multi-headed hydra. You end one gang, several more open up. It's not rocket science, right? And you were quite on the ball here when you said they're willing to come over because of what they're going to get when they arrive here. A French politician said this years ago, make Britain less attractive than France. That means getting really strong on the underground economy. The Deliveroo apps, all these delivery companies where it will say Mohammed is coming, you've got a picture of one person, somebody else entirely will deliver the food. The curry houses, all of that sort of thing. Also, the rogue landlords who are basically allowing people to live in these properties without any checks on their backgrounds. You get 10 or so people per room. Also, empty all of the migrant hotels. We should have temporary refugee camps built. You know, remember, 90-odd% of people coming over here are young men of fighting age. If these camps are good enough for our soldiers, they were good enough for my Polish family in the 1950s to live in, they should be fine. And if you do that, if you basically insist that no benefits go to anybody who's not a British citizen, even, for example, you remove the deterrent completely. Even further than that, what you need to do to stop the boats entirely is have another deterrent apart from Rwanda. And we have the Ascension Islands, a British overseas territory not applicable to the European Convention of Human Rights because it's under British law. You get old cruise ships moored in the Channel, so no one sets foot upon British soil. Soon, if they can't be turned back to France, they go onto these cruise ships. Once the cruise ships are full up, they're sailed off to the Ascension Islands. And once they're on a windswept island, it won't be long before the message goes back. The Australians did this with Nauru. The island of Nauru is 1,000 miles off the coast of Australia. It works hugely effectively there. We should be considering the same.
Well, there's an immediate policy there. There's a policy platform. Perhaps if anybody's listening, that might catch on. Rafe, I think it's way too common sense. Therefore, it won't. Adam, Jerry, thank you very, very much. Now, Rafe, stick with us. I know you're taking part in our next debate because the government is facing calls to clarify how the Supreme Court's ruling this week will affect schools in the UK and, of course, the use of gender-neutral or specific toilets. And after Wednesday's ruling, a woman and the term sex refer to a biological woman and biological sex, trumping gender identity. So is it time to kick the transgender ideology out of schools, and is it time to do away with gender-neutral toilets? The notion that a man who says he's a woman can go into a woman's toilet, is it time for that to stop? Well, joining me now is the broadcaster and the historian, Rafe Hadel-Manku, and also the podcast host of the Trans Lobby, and that's Frida Wallace. Frida, I'm going to come to you first. The ruling was historic. It was unequivocal. Legally, a man cannot become a woman and vice versa. And biologically, that's always been impossible. With that in mind, if the science and the law is on the side of if you like, the pre-trans movement, is it time to kick the trans movement out of schools?
Well, first of all, happy Easter, Martin. And I just want to bring a bit of a bit of joy to this conversation because, like when I go to church with my mum, she introduces me to people as her daughter. She understands that. When my niece writes me an Easter card, she will say, Happy Easter, Auntie Frida. It doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says. These are social realities. I'm not pretending to be a woman. I just have to, I don't opt into being transgender. It's what I am. And I don't ask for that. I just have to navigate it. The idea that I become a woman is not really a thing. Those parameters already exist in society. Now, when people ask what is a woman, I mean, Stormy Daniels is a woman, and so is Han Widdicombe. But where is the line between the two? Women are not to be defined by their reproductive sort of conditions. That's anti-feminist as far as I'm concerned.
Well, no, actually, that's what the court said this week. The court said that biology trumps ideology. A woman is a chromosomal woman with the reproductive organs of a woman. So you might say that, but that's not the case. Anne Widdecombe and Stormy Daniels are linked intrinsically by their genetics, by reality, by science, and now by the law.
Well, that's interesting because how are you going to know if somebody is transgender or not? Because what that implies is that if I assimilate, if I become looking woman enough, you won't notice me. And where does that put transgender men? It's like if there are transgender women that you will have seen that you wouldn't have known were transgender. So what it creates is a tier of acceptability. It's like a beauty standard that actual biological women, if you like that phrase, cannot pass.
OK, let me bring in now Rafe Hadelmanku. Rafe, over to you.
Well, I think it's clear. I mean, we cannot have anything more definitive than the Supreme Court ruling on this issue. And it wasn't a split decision even. This was the unanimous decision of the Supreme Court saying that the biological sex is the determining factor as to whether or not one is a woman. And that has to have repercussions without, of course, affecting the rights of trans people, as was said in the Supreme Court ruling. And, of course, every civilized society must treat all legitimate transgendered people and those with gender dysphoria with dignity, of course. But that mustn't encroach, of course, upon the rights of other peoples. And, of course, we must ultimately remember here that we're talking about an infinitesimally small number of people. In the 2021 census, only 48,000 people identified as trans male, 0.1% of the population, and another 48,000 said that they were trans women. Now, no society should be faced with a situation where they have to transform every aspect of their society in fundamental ways in order to accommodate such a tiny percentage of the population. Classic example, of course, being gender-neutral lavatories. Now, of course, there's a huge issue about this, which is now being discussed as a solution to the law change. The problem is, of course, the public as a whole are hugely opposed to gender-neutral toilets by a huge factor in polling. They find them uncomfortable. Huge security threat to women being in these places where, of course, they could be alone with a drunk person or a shady character. I've never been inside a woman's lavatory, but I'm told that they're much more clean and fresh than male lavatories. Women only have the choice of sitting down in lavatories. When men use them, they do tend to have rather disgusting lavatory seats and so forth. And for men as a whole, for example, if you go to the theatre, you go to the cinema, you go to a concert or a nightclub, the women's lavatories have a long queue. The men are in and out in a minute or so. I've been to gender-neutral establishments where literally the men are having to queue up for 10 minutes or so to use the lavatory. Now, why should tens of millions of men in British society, for example, have to change their habits in order to accommodate such a tiny percentage of the population? I think where you can make sensible changes and where you can actually cater to the needs of the trans community, that's fine, but everything has to be done in proportion.
Frida, what do you take of that?
Well, to be fair, I can understand the point of view there because, we do want... In public spaces, your first priority should be people's privacy and decency and respecting people's boundaries. If you're somebody that has to point at strangers, if you're somebody that cannot stop looking at people or making somebody feel uncomfortable, perhaps you shouldn't be in public in the first place. And in terms of gender neutral tends to come about because people need disabled spaces, because some businesses, if they cater to over a certain number of people, by law, have to provide a disabled space. And that disabled space then becomes the gender neutral space, because obviously people that are disabled need the assistance of their carer. So a disabled woman may have a male carer. a young girl who's got a single parent father may need to use that disabled space. It's not. There are no trans women invading spaces. This invasion narrative is nonsense. I know you like an invasion narrative on GB News. I mean,
no, Frida, that's not entirely fair, is it? I mean, we've had people in the studio ever since that ruling who's saying a great many women and girls do feel very concerned and nervous about biological men using their changing rooms, using their toys. You can't just brush that to one side. It's a legitimate fear, and in actual fact, this week the Supreme Court found in favour of that.
Well, what the Supreme Court does is not necessarily what reflects social reality. And I don't actually agree with the idea of a Supreme Court. I think parliamentary democracy should rule. The idea that a panel like an American system, the idea of an American system of a Supreme Court needs to be thrown out straight away, because that interrupts democracy. You need parliamentary democracy, people that can talk to the people on the street. Now, if a lobby group...
But the parliamentarians got it wrong, didn't they? I mean, it was only very recently that Keir Starmer was saying that 99% of women can't have a penis, implying that 1% can.
Well, that is a matter of philosophy rather than physiology. But I would say that when a lobby group can spend millions of pounds getting stories into the media to demonise trans women in the same way they demonise any issue when they want to get it over the line, if the IEA or the New Culture Forum can fund enough, media, that will change public opinion, and that is the point of people at Tufton Street. That is to change public opinion.
We've had Stonewall doing precisely this for years, unchecked.
Well, Stonewall are a failed organisation as far as I'm concerned.
It's a lobby group that's been disowned by those who founded it. We've had corporations cravenly seeking the Stonewall badge of approval to say that they meet Stonewall's criteria. And now, of course, the Supreme Court has exposed all of their guidelines as a complete scam, if not dangerous.
OK, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. We've simply run out of time. Happy Easter to you both. Thank you very much there. That's Frida Wallace and also Rafe Hadelmanku. Thank you very, very much for joining us. Now, the government is promising to work at pace to stop the rot in military accommodation. I'll be asking a veteran if they're convinced by that. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference
It's fun.
Oh, no, you didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 4:26 on this beautiful Easter Friday. I'm Martin Daubney here on GB News. Now, the government is promising to work at pace to stop the rot in military accommodation. And our Homeland Security editor, Mark White, has this report.
For decades, Britain's armed forces have been fighting another war. A never-ending battle back at home.
Fire!
Enraged by the shocking state of their military housing. With little action to end the neglect and disrepair.
Silence! Ready!
Record numbers of military personnel are quitting the armed forces. At this army base in Dorset, the Veterans Minister arrived to see for himself accommodation that's typical of the type of military housing badly in need of refurbishment. Damp and with an almost unbearable smell, there are thousands of similar properties across the defence estate. But just a few doors down, one of a growing number of military homes which have now been upgraded. 1,000 military homes are in this first wave of refurbishments.
Well, it's a prime example. We've seen one today that's been void for 3 to 6 months. We've seen this one that's been refurbished really fast, a really high standard. We're moving as fast as we can. We've already said 1,000 properties are going to be brought up to standard to get more people into accommodation. And then the defence housing strategy is going to give us our medium to long-term strategy. It's going to look at the whole estate across 30,000 plus houses.
Here on this army housing estate, we're a world away from the front line. But ask anyone in the military and they'll tell you wherever they're posted, they never stop worrying about families back home who are often living in completely unsuitable accommodation. In January, 36,000 military homes were brought back into public ownership. An independent panel is assessing how quickly they can be upgraded, but there are no quick fixes to decades of underinvestment.
And what I would say to those individuals joining or those individuals that are still in, that this government is absolutely committed to bringing the accommodation up to standard. This doesn't move fast, but they absolutely have my word and the government's word that we're going to bring the standard up and deliver the deal that they deserve.
With the government's determination to boost military spending in the face of an increasingly uncertain world, the state of service accommodation can be just as important as state-of-the-art weaponry and equipment in ensuring they're able to recruit and retain those frontline troops. Mark White, GB News.
Great package there by Mark White. And joining me now in the studio is the Army veteran podcast host on Parade UK, Sean Johnson. Jono, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have your company, mate.
Thanks, Martin.
Now, you've lived in military digs as a kid and throughout your life. Something's gone badly wrong. Tell us about your experience, first of all, of living in these kind of digs.
Well, I go back to the 60s when I lived in accommodation in Malta. We moved to Cyprus. I went to live in Germany. This is with my father, of course, as a military family. Yeah. And they were absolutely happy times. They were good accommodation. And if you ever have any happy memories back, I always go back to some good old days. I joined the army in the 80s, so I never got married in the forces. But I lived in a single soldiers' accommodation, and they were great as well. I mean, I think there were 4 men to a room, and now they're single men things. But they were good times, Martin.
When you see the pictures on screen there, John, or you were watching that package and you were just like shaking your head, saying it was disgusting, it's not fit for a dog to live in. They're falling apart, there's water dripping out the electrical sockets. What went wrong?
I think somewhere we've started to do this cheap outsource thing, and look at the state, like you said, look at the state of them. most companies now, they're all bidding for the next gig or the next contract, and you're getting cheap contractors in. I think I'm horrified, mate, that the guys have had to live like that, the families. And more importantly, what advert is that for young kids today joining the military, thinking you're going to live in a place like that? That's dreadful, mate.
It is. And I want to show you now, Jono, some videos we got yesterday. Mark White got these, another great Mark White exclusive. This is some Sudanese lads that came over illegally, and we've got videos. This is of them coming over illegally, and we've got some of them in hotel accommodation. And the ones in hotel accommodation, they basically are showing off to their pals. This is the one in the hotel there. Look, so he's making a rap video. At the British taxpayers' expense. They've come over on a dinghy from Singapore. Look, take a look around that room, Jono. Yeah. That is a room fit for a prince. That is a room certainly far in excess of the quality of accommodation being offered to British serving army and squad leaders. What does that say to you about how we're spending £7 million a day on that, and we've got houses fall apart for people in the army?
Well, it's obviously not right. I mean, people have got to go somewhere. That while claims a process, naturally, and rightly so. But if we go back to the topic of the story, serving personnel shouldn't have to go on ops or tours and live with their families around the world and come back and live in accommodation like that, Martin. That's just dreadful, mate. We've got to get a grip of it. We're not doing enough again, I don't think. I'm glad we're taking it back, if that's the right word. I saw something today. Is the government taking it back? We have to, because we've got to get this right, mate.
So you think that this has been ran to the ground by trying to save money, by outsourcing? Yeah. The correct thing to do is take back control, to bring it back almost like British Steel to state ownership and do a proper job. Are you confident that could happen?
I hope it does, mate, because, look, you know, I've been on tours, mate. Wherever you go around the world as a soldier, wherever you lay your hat is your home. It's your little bit of Blighty, if you will. You're not going to come back to a dump like that, are you? And think, Christ almighty, you know. Yeah. But, yeah, absolutely, mate.
Thank you very much, Sean. It's always a pleasure having you in the show. That's Sean Johnson, the Army vet and podcast host on Parade UK. Jono, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming in to see us on GB News. Lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including we'll be crossing to what's been voted as one of Britain's most boring towns, Alloa in Scotland, to find out if it really is completely and utterly boring. But first, here's your headlines with Tatiana Sanchez. Not at all boring.
Thank you very much, Martin. The top stories: a man has died trying to cross the English Channel. The migrant's body was brought to Dover Harbour along with dozens of other migrants who were taken off a small boat in the middle of the Channel early this morning. Border Force disembarked 51 migrants before the rescue vessel moved position to the nearby Dover RNLI station. The cause of this latest migrant tragedy is still not yet known. At least 225 migrants have lost their lives in the English Channel since the small boat crisis began in 2018. Home Office official figures confirmed 211 small boat migrants crossed the Channel yesterday. Meanwhile, more than 2,000 small boat migrants have arrived in the UK in a record week of illegal crossings, with hundreds more making the journey on Good Friday. GB News can reveal that so far today, 138 people have been brought to the Border Force Migrant Processing Centre at Dover Harbour. And the Chancellor says she'll hold talks with the White House next week amid efforts to strike a UK-US trade deal, despite Donald Trump downplaying the likelihood of any imminent agreements. Britain hopes the deal can help soften the brunt of the US president sweeping 10% tariffs on all goods imported to America, with The Telegraph reporting that officials in Washington believe an agreement could be weeks away. Rachel Reeves says active negotiations with the Americans are still ongoing. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me at 5 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. In Lancashire,
The M6 northbound between junctions 31A and 32 has a broken down vehicle closing one of 4 lanes. Traffic is expected to return to normal between 5:15 and 5:30 this evening. On the A55, emergency works have closed one lane between junction 23 at Landulus and junction 23A at Pensarn, resulting in slow traffic due to a speed limit of 40 miles per hour. Meanwhile, the A36 southbound in Wiltshire sees congestion between the A360 and the A338, delaying traffic by 10 minutes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Can you find love in your twilight years? That's what we're asking this morning. Broadcaster Ryan Mark Parsons and former Conservative MP Anne Widdecombe join us now. Good to see you both this morning. Anne, let's start with you. Is 70 too old to date, do you think?
70 isn't too old for anything. Everybody ages at different rates, both mentally, physically, in the sorts of things they like. When you say to me, is 80 too late to, is 70, well, we might even say 80. It's too late to find love. The answer is just look around you. Lots of people have. But let me say right away, no, that's not an invitation. I've absolutely no ambitions in that area at all.
Ryan Mark, what do you make of it? Do we need to stop putting a bar on ageing and dating?
No, I don't think we should. I think once you get to such an old age, you really should be looking for love internally. I mean, you should self-love. I just don't see the point at 70 years old to be searching for love at that point. I think you should go on a holiday somewhere. I think you should find love with the sunshine and a cocktail, perhaps, instead of looking for a man or a woman. I think at what point do you decide that you know, love is not going to come around knocking on your door? And I think probably at the age of 70, that is when you should decide it's time to give up. I'm 24, living in London. I know how incredibly hard it is to find love. I don't know how anyone who has wrinkles and grey hair at the age of 70, over someone like me, could perhaps find love. I just don't think it's possible. I think it's a nice idea, but I think it's not feasible. And also, I don't think there's any point at that age.
The People's Channel.
Welcome back, 4:38 on this beautiful Easter Friday with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Alloa in Scotland has been dubbed one of the most boring towns in Britain. The claim was made following a poll conducted by The Telegraph, with the town being described as culturally devoid and one of the most deprived places in Scotland. Well, getting all the dream gigs, we've sent our man, Tony Maguire, to Alloa, GB News reporter, to see what the locals make of it. Tony, is it really that bad? It's third in Britain as the most boring place to live, only beaten by Stevenage and Surbiton. What's so dull about Alloa?
Well, it's interesting you say that, Martin. I mean, I'm reading this as a list of places rather than worst to most or vice versa. But indeed, this is a list of 7 places that the Telegraph dubbed the most boring towns in Britain. And if you're on this list of towns, then, don't worry, I've got you by the end of this report. But Stevenage, Surbiton, Runcorn, Grantham, Swindon, Lampeter, and of course here in Alloa. And here in Alloa, straight off the bat, this is an incredible town with lots of history, and I've been out talking to the locals today to find out what they've made of being named in this list of Britain's most boring towns. Let's have a listen.
Well, I don't understand why it's been called that, but I don't know what to do now. Everyone's all shutting, all the shops.
Do you think they've got it wrong?
I don't think it's boring, I just think it's not really got much in it. Aye.
Well, I would say it's not terribly boring, but there is not much as well.
Plenty of supermarkets though.
Yeah.
So the young age is, they've made this town really bad.
It's pretty insulting. I've only moved here about 7 years ago and I love it. I think it's a great wee place to live.
Perfect.
It's friendly.
What do you like about Alloa?
It's friendly. It's easy access to a lot of places like Stirling, Glasgow, Edinburgh. You're quite central. It's beautiful. We're right on the banks of the Forth.
So, I mean, you could hear there that not a lot to do, not a lot of variety, and what are you when you don't have a lot to do? Well, you're bored. So, you know, there is some merit, I guess, to this list, at least as far as Alloa goes, but, I mean, this town here has a 14th century medieval tower. It once had 6 breweries, and today, you know, it even has a cinema that's in an old kirk. And as we move further down the list, then, you know, that story continues. Over in Stevenage, sure, everyone's a commuter, but that's because it has one of the country's first pedestrianised areas in the middle of town. Runcorn, you know, the home of the bridge to North Wales, i.e. the fastest way out of Runcorn, and indeed even their rugby team is called the Chemics. So sorry Runcorn, I'll let you down a bit there. Grantham, everything is fine, but you know, nothing is great, but sure, but that's the home of late-staged capitalism, and indeed I think if you cut Grantham, it would bleed Brexit. And right across this list from Surbiton, you know, very, very close to the word suburb, very easy pickings for naysayers, but just because it doesn't have a tube station, well, that means that shops are easy to walk around, you know, on a Saturday afternoon. The bottom of the list, we kind of look at Swindon, and well, you know, the Roundabout Society's #1 circular junction. You know, they can't all be winners. You know, not every town in the UK can be a Bannockburn or a Canterbury, but the truth of the matter is that home is home, no matter where you are. Only you will know the hidden gems in your local area, and for that point, it's important that every town has its moments, every town has its attractions, and every town has people championing it. So even here in Alloa, I live about 40 miles away, and even I know that Alloa, it's not that bad.
Do you know what, Tony Maguire, I thought that was beautiful, and I tell you what, you could have a career as an estate agent. I'd buy a house in any of those towns after what you said there. You sold them well, you sold them heartily, and all the locals you bumped into in Alloa there, Tone, they seem lovely. They seem really, really up for a chat. They seem like lovely, down-to-earth the people you meet in there, mate.
That's it. I mean, I think we forget that a town is made by the people that are in it. You know, a town is not the brick and mortar, it's the people that make it and build it and move it outwards, you know, and, you know, without getting too sentimental, that's true whether it's, you know, a large city like London or indeed any of the towns and villages all the way through these British Isles. So, yeah, you know, you learn when you invest in the history of your local area, you learn that your town has a lot more to offer than perhaps you realise.
Do you know what, Tony Maguire, what's wrong with being boring? I mean, I live in London, and I can meet 500 idiots before I even get home. You know, I'd like to live somewhere quite boring. You know, what's wrong with it? The people there haven't got a problem with it. Tony, you did a great job there. Get yourself down for a pint with the locals there, but that won't be boring. And talk about 6 breweries. 6 breweries. Wow, if I had 6 breweries now, mate, I'll be moving there tomorrow. Tony Maguire in Alloa. Well done, mate. Fantastic reporting. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And make sure you have a cracking Easter. Love it. Now, if you're in search of some holiday sun this year, then here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations, including Alloa.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The changeable weather across southern parts of Europe continues as we go into the weekend. Starting off looking in the east, and a fair few showers across the eastern parts of Greece into Bulgaria, also across parts of Montenegro and Croatia too. Mostly dry though for Italy. Heavy rain and strong winds pushing in across parts of Portugal and Spain. Meanwhile, the Canary Islands seeing a few spots of rain perhaps. A largely dry picture as we go into the beginning of next week, however. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, a very good afternoon to you. This is your GB News weather update provided by the Met Office. Has been quite a mixed start to this long Easter weekend. Those out towards the east generally faring quite well, but further towards the west we've got low pressure in charge, and this has been bringing outbreaks of rain for Western England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and increasingly into parts of Scotland as well. There are rain warnings in force for some of these western regions, so do take care if you're travelling over the next 24 hours because some delays to your journeys are possible. With all the rain and the clouds and a quite noticeable breeze as well, it is going to be a mild night though, so temperatures generally ranging between 7 and 10 degrees Celsius. As we kick off Saturday then, this east-west split is still going to be in play. So some further heavy pulses of rain likely for the Banai Brecaniog, parts of the higher ground of southwest England over towards Dorset and Hampshire as well. The Mourne and Antrim mountains of Northern Ireland also seeing a fair amount of rain building up as well, and it will eventually push a little bit further northwards into other areas of Scotland. A reasonable amount of clouds still in the east, but at least drier to start off Saturday here, and hopefully into the afternoon there will be an increasing amount of brighter spells developing for those eastern regions as well. And the afternoon will also be an improving picture for Wales, parts of southwest England as the rain does begin to ease, but it's likely to remain fairly damp and dreary across much of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. Generally a cooler day than today all round, particularly in the east where we do have this North Sea breeze coming in that will peg the temperatures back along those coastal districts, around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius overall. As we head into the evening then, that rain in the north will continue to steadily clear its way off, and then into Sunday, that is generally looking like the better day of the Easter weekend overall. A good number of bright sunny spells eventually making their way through, but on Monday we're likely to see the showers returning once again, and that slightly changeable theme will be continuing as we head throughout the rest of next week. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:47 on this wonderful Easter Friday with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, Albert Warne, Bert they called him, the last known survivor of the infamous Burma Railway, has died at the grand old age of 105. Bert was taken prisoner by the Japanese following the fall of Singapore in 1942, and by the end of the war, he weighed just 42 kilograms. Well, to discuss this incredible story, I'm joined in the studio by the historian, Tony McMahon. Tony, welcome to the show. So, Bert's passed away. His obituary came out yesterday. I want to talk to you not only about Bert, but about what he represented, the generation he represented. He had an incredible story of survival and then came back to Britain and led a very ordinary life. Quickly, if you could, about Bert, about how he managed to survive numerous disasters.
I mean, this guy had what you might call a boy's own life, like a boy's own adventure, if anybody remembers those. I'm sure they do. But it was, it's pure action adventure at that stage in his life. You know, he goes to war. He's actually in the sickbay of a ship that's making its way to Singapore. Singapore's under attack from the Japanese. Winston Churchill is fretting because Singapore is the jewel of the British Empire in Southeast Asia. Bert's on his way to basically provide supplies to Singapore. Yeah. But the ship he's on gets hit 3 times. He's in the sick bay with dysentery. He manages to swim out of a porthole, something you see in a Hollywood movie you wouldn't believe could actually happen. Then he's taken to a hospital in China, but that hospital is then captured by the Japanese. He's taken to a Japanese prisoner of war camp. And those camps, of course, were horrific. And we can't imagine what Bert went through, but we know he was emaciated, as you said, by the end of the war, and he was involved in building that railway. They called it the Death Railway, from Burma to Thailand.
And he left the hospital on a hunch, and that hunch saved his life. He was shot by a shell, concussed, he discharged himself, and 200 hospital staff in the hospital, the Channing Hospital in Singapore, was slaughtered by the Japanese. He evaded death on multiple occasions. 27% of all prisoner of wars, 16,000 lost their lives or died of disease in Japanese hands compared to 4% in German prisoner of war camps. And then he came back to Britain and led a very peaceful and fulfilling life and rarely reflected upon the war. And isn't that just that generation stoicism and amazing sort of fortitude? And as we remember them now, looking forward, of course, to VE Day.
Well, exactly. I mean, I don't know about you. Well, I do know about you. I'm sure that, you and I, we had teachers, we knew people who'd been in the Second World War. I remember my head teacher had been in the war. That was like 40, 50 years ago, and we're now losing those people. It seems like yesterday we were losing the First World War veterans. We're now about to lose that connection to the Second World War. And I think particularly those who went through that Far East campaign, we've got, nobody left soon, who were, who suffered in ways that we don't normally think of British POWs, suffering in that way, being reduced to, we normally associate that with the concentration camps.
Yeah.
And here were British POWs that were returning from the war as husks, half their body weight, who've been treated in a barbaric manner. And it's really important that we remember those people, people like Bert, because, if we forget them, well, we're obviously condemned to repeat what happened before. We really owe it to Bert, I think, to remember what happened to him and all his comrades who died. And, of course, when they tried to escape, they were shot on the spot, they were tortured repeatedly. I mean, this is real barbaric stuff.
And Albert Bert Warren, he is the last known veteran of that Burma Railway campaign. And I suppose, Tony, last night I was with a World War II veteran, Dorothea. She appeared on Patrick Chris's show. She came in here. I did her makeup for her because she wanted to look better. She was just such an amazing, wonderful, phenomenal human being. And to hold the hand of somebody who used to shine lights at the Luftwaffe in World War II, I found incredibly emotional, to the point of being spiritual. And I think you're absolutely right. Now, we'll get to a point now where there's, I think, less than 200, or around about 200. Won't be long before Bert is the last from Burma. It won't be long before we're down to the last of them all.
Yeah, and, it still seems, I think, to our generation, it still seems like relatively recent history. I had, say, teachers, friends of mine whose parents were in the war, and yet we're losing that very important connection. And as you say, the real hallmark of that generation is that when they came home, you often hear them say they couldn't talk about it because they couldn't explain it, what they'd gone through. And nobody would believe what they were saying, oh, Granddad's making it up, whatever. But we know those things happened because the records are there. We know what happened to those people, there's photographic evidence and so on. But as you say, there's a kind of humility. They didn't come back and boast about it. They didn't try and big themselves up. They just got on because that generation had that attitude that, you just plough on. You'd served king and country, you'd done your bit, might have suffered a tad, but, brush yourself off and you carry on.
And this is an era, of course, before PTSD, and perhaps some of them may have benefited from being diagnosed. But you're absolutely right. I remember growing up around my grandfathers and hearing their stories about Africa and Greece, waking up, having frost on their uniforms, picking oranges, as well as the war they faced as well. And that's slipping away. But now's the time to be positive and to remember, because we're doing our very best to help those veterans get to those beaches in Normandy for one last time, because VE Day 80th is going to be the last big occasion, isn't it? They're all together.
Yeah, and I think, as the world becomes a very dangerous place, we really owe it to them and to ourselves to actually listen to their testimonies while they're still here. And by the way, I've just remembered something. I remember a maths teacher actually explaining 180 degrees to us, talking about how he operated an ACAC gun on the cliffs of Dover against the Luftwaffe as they came over. That's the kind of thing that, a young person now wouldn't be able to get from a teacher, because we had that.
Tony McMahon, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much. Albert Bert Warren, rest in peace. Now coming up next in the week, the Supreme Court ruled biological sex trumps gender identity. I'll be asking, is it time for men to get their spaces back? That's next with me, Martin Daubney.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, a very good afternoon to you. This is your GB News weather updates provided by the Met Office. Has been quite a mixed start to this long Easter weekend. Those out towards the east generally faring quite well, but further towards the west we've got low pressure in charge, and this has been bringing outbreaks of rain for Western England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and increasingly into parts of Scotland as well. There are rain warnings in force for some of these western regions, so do take care if you're travelling over the next 24 hours because some delays to your journeys are possible. With all the rain and the clouds and a quite noticeable breeze as well, it is going to be a mild night though, so temperatures generally ranging between 7 and 10 degrees Celsius. As we kick off Saturday then, this east-west split is still going to be in play, so some further heavy pulses of rain likely for the Banai Brecaniog, parts of the higher ground of southwest England over towards Dorset and Hampshire as well. The Mourne and Antrim mountains of Northern Ireland also seeing a fair amount of rain building up as well, and it will eventually push a little bit further northwards into other areas of Scotland. A reasonable amount of clouds still in the east, but at least drier to start off Saturday here, and hopefully into the afternoon there will be an increasing amount of brighter spells developing for those eastern regions as well. And the afternoon will also be an improving picture for Wales, parts of southwest England as the rain does begin to ease, but it's likely to remain fairly damp and dreary across much of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. Generally a cooler day than today all round, particularly in the east where we do have this North Sea breeze coming in that will peg the temperatures back along those coastal districts, around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius overall. As we head into the evening then, that rain in the north will continue to steadily clear its way off, and then into Sunday, that is generally looking like the better day of the Easter weekend overall. A good number of bright sunny spells eventually making their way through, but on Monday we're likely to see the showers returning once again, and that slightly changeable theme will be continuing as we head throughout the rest of next week. Enjoy your day, bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. In Staffordshire, drivers on the M6 northbound between Junction 14 and Junction 15 face a collision-related delay, with 2 lanes closed and approximately 40-minute delays. This incident is expected to clear by 6:30 this evening. On the A36 southbound in Wiltshire, congestion persists between the A30 East and the junction with the A27, with normal traffic conditions anticipated soon. Meanwhile, traffic is sluggish on the A27 westbound near Brighton, where delays of 10 minutes remain due to congestion. Stay tuned for updates, and for more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with sky roof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. on this magnificent Easter Friday, and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. And we've got some breaking news. It's a nightmare for Sir Keir Starmer because more than 2,000 small boat migrants have arrived in Britain in a record single week of illegal crossings. That is an unholy row for Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party on Good Friday. And in the week, the Supreme Court ruled that biological sex trumps gender identity. Today, GB News has been asking the big questions. Is it time now for men and boys to reclaim their spaces? Should we make the Scouts the Boy Scouts again? And what about kicking women out of men's clubs? And Ed Miliband, Ed Davey and Greenpeace plan to kill the Whitehaven coal mine. But Reform Deputy Leader Richard Tice claims that British coal is among the best in the world and could and should be used to power the Scunthorpe Steelworks. Mr Tice will join me today and we'll ask, is it time to reopen the pits and give coal and not dole to Britain's forgotten industrial heartlands? Now, if you're a pensioner and you're about to put down that Easter egg, then stop. Have a bite of it, because new advice today suggests that buffer weight for OAPs is actually healthy for us. An extra few pounds of padding helps to build muscle and it helps to cushion those falls. So have a cup of tea and tuck into that egg. Welcome to the show. I hope you're having a magnificent Easter and I hope you have a continued beautiful weekend with your family and friends. But what about having a bit of a ding-dong? We're going to have one of those surely. In the week, the Supreme Court ruled that the trans movement seems to be on its deathbed by saying that biology, sex, trumps gender. Legally and scientifically now, a woman is a woman and a man can never become one in those eyes. But what about taking it further? How about if we kick women out of men and boys spaces? Did equality go too far? What's wrong with a men's club where women aren't allowed? It's not always sexist. What's wrong with the Boy Scouts? The Boy Scouts used to be just boys. Then it went gender neutral and became the Scouts. Now, don't forget that the Girl Guides and the Brownies, they never let boys in. Boys' spaces were completely eroded. Boys need to be boys. They can learn from each other. Men don't always be sexist and conspire to do bad things when they're on their own. They can actually solve problems. They can do things on their own devices. Time to get women out of men's spaces. There we go. Let's have a good old argument on this Good Friday. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. Now it's your headlines, and here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you. The top stories: a small boat migrant has died in the English Channel this morning as hundreds more attempt to cross to the UK. The migrant's body was brought to Dover Harbour along with dozens of other migrants who were taken off a small boat in the middle of the Channel around 7 a.m. this morning. Border Force disembarked 51 migrants before the rescue vessel moved position to the nearby Dover RNLI station. The cause of this latest migrant tragedy is not yet known. At least 225 migrants have lost their lives in the Channel since the small boats crisis began in 2018. Home Office official figures confirmed 211 small boat migrants crossed yesterday. Meanwhile, more than 2,000 small boat migrants have arrived in the UK in a record week of illegal crossings, with hundreds more making the journey on Good Friday. GB News can reveal so far today 138 people have been brought to the Border Force Migrant Processing Centre at Dover Harbour. US President Donald Trump has suggested Buckingham Palace is setting a date for September for his second state visit to the UK. The president told reporters in the White House last night that he was invited by the King and the country. It comes after Sir Keir Starmer handed Mr Trump an invitation letter from King Charles in February during his visit to Washington. Mr Trump was hosted by the late Queen Elizabeth II during his previous three-day state visit. Traditionally, second-term US presidents are not offered a state visit and have instead been invited for tea or lunch with the monarch at Windsor Castle. In other news, US President Donald Trump will walk away from trying to broker a Russia-Ukraine peace deal within days unless there are clear signs that a deal can be done, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has warned. After meeting with European leaders in Paris, Mr. Rubio said, "We're not going to continue this endeavour for weeks and months on end." The Kremlin says Russia is committed to resolving the conflict, ensuring its own interests, and is open to dialogue. Donald Trump promised during his election campaign to end the war within his first 24 hours in the White House. He moderated that claim on taking office, suggesting a deal by April or May. 2 British tourists are among 4 people killed after a cable car snapped near Naples in Italy. A middle-aged man remains in a critical condition following the accident. 16 passengers were safely evacuated from a cabin that stopped in mid-air near the foot of the mountain. The accident occurred just a week after the cable car, popular for its views of Mount Vesuvius and the Bay of Naples, reopened for the season. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More news soon.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now then, more than 2,000 small boat migrants have arrived in Britain in a record single week of illegal crossings as 150 migrants crossed the Channel this morning alone. Quite a week and nightmare news for Keir Starmer on this unholy Good Friday, for him at least. And I'm joined now in the studio by GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, welcome back. So it's grim reading as the Prime Minister sits down for his Easter break. 2,000 this week alone, a record number. Rishi Sunak said he'd stop the boats. That didn't happen. Keir Starmer said he'd smash the gangs. That didn't happen. And there have been a couple of fatalities too. Brings up
Yes, so 2,000, as you said, crossing this week, and in the last 24 hours, 2 fatalities, one in Dunkirk and one on the waters on the approach to Dover. Let's talk about the one approaching Dover first, because Kent Police have released a statement. We don't actually know how this migrant died yet, but as we discussed previously, the statement may give us a clue. So Kent Police were called at 8:26 a.m. this morning after a border force patrol responded to a medical emergency on a small boat in the English Channel. A man has since been pronounced deceased. Officers have launched an investigation to establish the circumstances leading to the man's death. The priority remains to establish the man's identity in order to notify his family. And officers are currently at Dover Lifeboat Station while initial inquiries are underway. Now, obviously, you would, at first blush, you would assume, well, this person has drowned. But actually now it is possible that this person was either trampled or there have been instances in the past of stabbings. Because they pack them so tightly, the gangs pack them so tightly on the boats now that it is possible he suffocated on the journey here. We don't know yet, but it is possible.
But I think the key sentence in this statement from the Kent Police is a medical emergency on a small boat.
Yeah, so not in the waters.
It's not in the waters, on the boat. Now, that could be a heart attack, could be death by natural causes. What we do know is that it can kick off on these vessels. They're overcrowded. There are a lot of people who haven't paid. We've seen deaths of women and children in the shallows on the French side, where men who haven't paid are tramping on. They don't care about the well-being of other people on these vessels oftentimes.
78 deaths last year, for example. And as you said, 2,000 in the last week. So they're calculating that in the absence of any deterrent on the policy side, the only real deterrent is the violence and the dangers of the journey itself. But it's a risk worth taking, because once you get here, you're probably going to stay here, and you're probably going to get, as we've seen, the gangs advertise this themselves. When you get here, you get a hotel, you get food, so on. You're now showing footage. Those watching on television will see. This is basically marketing material that these gangs create and share on social media to promote basically their service.
And then
it's advertising.
Then once they land in Blighty, look, they're given a luxury hotel. This is, again, use a social media post. Mark White has been sent loads and loads of these. Yesterday, we did a huge bunch of this. Here's a guy, look, posting. This is the guy. That's a list of all the countries he travelled through, by the way, to get to Britain. And there he is, posting for a tourist photograph. We're told, Adam Cherry, these young men, because let's face it, they're nearly almost always young men, are fleeing war zones. They look more like they're on a Jolly Boys tour. Look like they won the lottery.
Yeah, and the interesting point about the hotels themselves, the hotel accommodation, where it costs millions of pounds to the taxpayer every day.
7 million a day.
Correct. the government said they would wind that down and stop that. Actually, they've realised, no, we can't do that. We have so many coming across and no other place to put them that we're going to extend this scheme. So actually, the plans to wind that down no longer exist.
You know, Adam Cherry, I was on the show last week with Lord Maurice Glassman. He's a Labour peer who gets the working classes. He understands the red wall intrinsically. He said to me, the Labour Party know they've got to deal with this. They know if they don't deal with it, it will do to them what it did to the Conservatives. It will sink the government. But so far, nothing's working.
No, Number 10 do know this, and they try to promote their action on this with, raids, filming those raids, promoting the number of deportation flights and so on, which are happening. But it's undermined by the sheer volume of people coming across. I mean, we're not even in summer yet. We're in mid-April. We're in spring. Once we get to June, July, who knows what these numbers could be? 2,000 would have been extraordinary in the middle of summer last year.
And this can go on as far as September, and we're seeing two new trends, and that is as soon as the weather is calm, they're steaming over, and the number of people on a single craft is going up and up and up. It's now 60, 70 plus on a single boat. There's no sign of this ending anytime soon, and it's a nightmare for the government. Adam Cherry, excellent as ever. Thank you very much for all your help on the show this week as well. Now, moving on, there are calls for men's spaces to be restored and preserved after the Supreme Court's ruling that the definition is based on biological sex. So, should we make the Scouts the Boy Scouts again? And what about kicking women out of men's clubs? It's going to kick off. Let's debate this. I'm now joined by the men's activist Peter Lloyd and the self-confessed anarchist, feminist and author Lisa McKenzie. Both of these people I consider as pals. I don't know how they're going to get on, though. Let's start with you, Peter Lloyd. We've seen a huge victory here for biology, for the law this week. The trans movement seems to have been defeated. Should things go a stage further? What about reclaiming men's spaces?
Yeah, I think that's the natural next step. There's been a feminist campaign to invade men's spaces for literally decades. There's a picture I've sent to your producer. I don't know if they could flash it up on the screen now, but there was a case back in the 70s where female sports reporters took a case all the way to the Supreme Court so that they could get access to men's changing rooms. Even when these men were naked, this completely violated their human right to privacy, but the law went against them and women were allowed in their changing rooms. This was a violation then, it's a violation now. So yes, it does happen, and quite frankly, I've watched with interest when women have complained about men doing the same in return.
And what about things, for example, with boys, Peter Lloyd? For example, the Boy Scouts used to be boys only. Right. It became the Scouts, but they didn't do the same with the Girl Guides or with the Brownies. It just seems to you, does it not, that the boy spaces have all gone, but there's been no reciprocal pushback. Men and boys have been forced out of public space.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and it's completely political, by the way. You know, it's not based on any kind of safety issue. It's all political. I call it feminist FOMO. They seem to think that they're missing out when they're not in men's clubs or something. But you only have to look at the active campaign by The Guardian last year. They undertook a very, very stringent campaign against the Garrett Club. Who's offended by the Garrett Club? It's been there for years. No one's bothered about it. But of course, all the feminists wanted access because it was one place they decided they couldn't get into. It's such a double standard, and it really highlights the hypocrisy in the sisterhood. I'm sure Lisa's going to disagree with me, but I love Lisa. Hi, Lisa. So nice to see you.
Lisa McKenzie, do you have feminist fear of missing out of being in these spaces?
Do you know what, Martin? I really do not, because I grew up, as you know, in Nottinghamshire, where there was many working men's clubs. You know, I know exactly what happens, you know, in the smoking room, in the tap room, in a pub. Actually, most women never wanted to go in there anyway. Why did we want to go in there? You know, we had our own, we had the best side. So I'm not sure there are many spaces that are men's spaces. I'm not sure there are any men's spaces anyway, really, where they'd want us to stay out. My experience is they always want us to come in. I mean, you know, the amount of nightclubs in Nottingham that used to be women could get in free, so the blokes would come and pay. You know, that I don't see that. I don't know whether this is the issue. All those rugby clubs where the women are sort of taking the spots of men. You know, I'm not sure where women are invading men's spaces. I'll be honest, I've never heard of this before.
Well, it really is a thing, and I can tell you from anecdotal evidence that it does happen on a regular basis. You go to any nightclub or any bar, even in central London, when there's a large queue for the ladies' toilet, they are more than happy to invade the gents. And when you're using a urinal, that's really not a very pleasant experience. It feels very invasive. You know, it's not a nice thing to happen. And
I have done that.
Right, and that is my point.
But I've obviously not used the urinal, obviously. But whenever I, you know, I am classic. I'm from Nottingham. So, you know, whenever I have done that, and I have done it, you always sort of go in and you go, hi, guys, is it all right if two women coming through? And they'll go, yeah, off you go, get in the cubicle. So, you know, I'm not sure there's loads of men's spaces where men are going, oh, my God, there's women.
But it is true to say, though, that there are a magnitude of women-only spaces which women have fought long and hard for. And, you know, and that's never really been pushed back against by men. But, for example, the Boy Scouts, you know, was a magnificent place where boys can learn a lot from being around other boys, and there's been no, you know, what I'm trying to say is it's all about gender neutrality so long as it's men who are getting pushed out. Peter, am I wrong?
No, you're completely right, Martin. And this has been going on, as I said earlier, for literally decades, and it's going to continue for more decades. And this is very disturbing when you think that, you know, men's mental health, men's suicide rate is at an all-time high. Men clearly need a space where they can be themselves without judgment from women. And I am sorry, but it's women who judge men. It's not other men who really judge them. It's women, and that is why men don't cry in front of women. It's why men don't show emotion in front of women, because they fear being judged. We're constantly told men need to show more emotion, men need to cry more. I'm sorry, they already do. You go to any football match, men are crying, cheering, hugging each other, kissing each other. They are emotionally literate in spades. It's not that they cannot do it, it's that they can only do it in an environment where they feel safe. And that is why men's spaces are important, because at the moment they're constantly surrounded by women and they can't be the true selves.
Lisa?
Yeah, I'm not having that. I mean, I'm not having that at all. I mean, you know, I think if anybody's judging men for showing emotion or crying, it is other men. That's what other men do. You know, it's other men that do that. Women, you know, there'll be women all over the nation now crying out, saying, "Men, be more, you know, be more emotional. Be more, you know, get emotional." But actually, it is other men that judge men, not women.
Well, Lisa, I hate to tell you, but as a man, my lived experience trumps your views.
You know, my lived experience as a woman in Nottingham, you know, in the famous city of Nottingham Forest, that everybody's over the last few weeks have been crying and laughing and sort of showing loads of emotion in the pubs.
I mean, you know, we're kind of joking about it now, but obviously I've always fully supported women having their own spaces separate from men. All I ask is that the same is done in return and that men also get their own spaces. You know, it's not sexist when men want it.
All right, we've got to move on. And I'll tell you what, Lisa, if Forest don't qualify for Europe, I'll definitely be crying. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Lisa McKenzie, always a pleasure. And in the studio, Peter Lloyd. Wonderful debate. Great bit of fun. Now, we've got some breaking news for you now, and it's major because Keir Starmer has spoken to the US President Donald Trump this afternoon. Number 10 have confirmed. And the quote says this: the leaders began by discussing the ongoing and productive discussions between the UK and the US on trade. And the Prime Minister has reiterated his commitments to free and open trade and the importance of protecting the national interest. And they went on that they agreed to stay in touch. So just to repeat there, number 10 has confirmed. Breaking news: Keir Starmer has spoken to US President Donald Trump this afternoon. They began by discussing the ongoing and productive discussions between the UK and the US on trade. And the Prime Minister reiterated his commitment to free and open trade and the importance of protecting the national interest. They agreed to stay in touch. We'll have more on that as we get more detail from number 10. Now, coming next, should we bring back the coal pits, bring back the coal mines? They might save our steel. Reform UK MP Richard Tice joins me next in the studio. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 5:22 on Easter Friday with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Now, British steel bosses have admitted that UK coal could fuel its blast furnaces. And that's according to the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. Now, this adds pressure on Ed Miliband over the blocking of a new Cumbrian coal mine at Whitehaven. So here's the question. Should we bring back British pits to help make British steel? Well, joining me now is the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. Richard, welcome to the show. You've been on this conversation for years now. You were one of the first to say British steel should be fully nationalised as a strategic industry, and you've also been saying, why not power it with British coal? Tell us why you think that's a good idea.
Well, it's got a good ring to it, hasn't it? British coal for British steel, for a nation who believes in making their own things. And we know that actually those two industries were the powerhouse of wealth creation for the Industrial Revolution. But look, we've all been gaslit, we've been misinformed, and we've been lied to. And I've discovered it. And I'm calling out the Labour Party and the eco-zealots. When the pit was denied being opened last autumn by Ed Miliband, a concerted effort went around by everybody to say that the coal wasn't suitable to be used by our own blast furnace steelworks at Port Talbot and Scunthorpe, and it was all going to be exported. I have discovered that that was a lie. Last Saturday, in the House of Commons, a Labour MP repeated that point. He misinformed the House of Commons. James Murray, the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, earlier this week, likewise, at best misinformed the British people. I have a document from 2020, Martin, which was by an expert, a planning document that was part of the planning representations, that confirms letters of support from both Tata Steel and British Steel that they wanted to use the Cumbrian coal, which has the same sort of sulfur content of about 0.9% as the US coal that British Steel is importing from the US and then blends with lower sulfur coal.
Just to interject, I'm very familiar with this case as well, and the position from Greenpeace, I think from Ed Davey and from the Labour Party until now, the official line, if you like, has been that the Whitehaven coal is too sulphur rich. It's dirty coal, it's not good enough to be burnt in British blast furnaces, and it was only earmarked for exportation, and therefore the mine wasn't viable. That was the official line. You're saying that's wrong?
That official line is a deliberate lie by the eco-zealots. I've got the documentation, and I repeat, the US coal that British Steel Scunthorpe is importing from the US is the same sulphur content, almost very, very similar specification to the Cumbrian coal. We've been gaslit, we've been misled. I'm properly angry about it. Literally 10 days ago, I had senior British Steel executives in Scunthorpe tell me that they could use the Cumbria coal. These lies and misinformation from the zealots and the other MPs has got to stop. And all of a sudden, let me just reinforce this point. In the last week, we've seen parliamentarians all of a sudden in love with blast furnaces. The same parliamentarians who until a month ago were hoping that Jingye would do a deal to close the blast furnaces and replace them with newly built electric arc furnaces. I mean, the pure hypocrisy of these people, when they were faced with Nigel and I calling it out and saying there were 3 days to save those blast furnaces, that's why there was a recall of Parliament.
So, Richard Tice, what would you say to the government's line has been consistent on this, and that is that we need to move away from coal, it's a dirty fuel, it's not the basis of a sustainable British energy policy? They would say, of course, we need to move towards clean, green energy. What's your response to that? You seem out of kilter with that.
Literally, last Saturday, we had the first recall Parliament on a Saturday for 43 years in order to save the blast furnaces. That's what was done. And the reason was the government panicked because Nigel and I said, we've got to save these blast furnaces. So you can't work blast furnaces from electricity. You need coal. The only question is, where does it come from, this coking coal? You either import it from overseas, creating a lot more CO2 and use of shipping fuel, bringing it in from Australia or from the US, or guess what? You could send it about 150, 200 miles from Cumbria, from that West Lancashire mine, and that would be great. British jobs, British wealth creation, British coal for British steel. What's not to like? I'm raging angry about it. I really am, because when you have British Steel executives tell you that coal was fine, thank you very much, and yes, you blend it in your coking ovens, and guess what? The Chinese Jingye, who clearly bought a British Steel to sabotage it and wind it down, they closed the coking ovens. Well, fine. In the overall scheme of things, we'll let's get some new coking ovens. We've got to think British. We've got to think about our own self-reliance. Okay. We've got to invest in that plant and go for it. We can make a great, great business, a viable business of British Steel.
OK, Richard Tice, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on this Easter Friday. I appreciate your time. Now, a British Steel spokesman has told GB News this, saying it was focused on sourcing the best and necessary materials needed to keep our operations running. And a government spokesman told GB News this: the Labour government is focused on securing our steel industry to protect British jobs and British workers. They claim Whitehaven would not have prevented the situation British Steel has faced, and those suggesting otherwise are wrong. And the Liberal Democrats have previously called for coal mining projects to be cancelled and say opening new coal mines wrecks the good reputation that Britain has built up by cutting its emissions through renewable energy. And last month, the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, refused to say that she would open coal-fired power stations and has previously said that she doesn't think that anyone actually wants to work in coal mines in this country. Well, for a counterpoint, I'm now joined by the director of the Climate Media Coalition, Donica McCarthy. Donna, welcome to the show and a very happy Easter to you. You no doubt overheard there Richard Tice saying British coal for British steel. What say you?
Yeah, happy Easter to you, Martin, as well. The extraordinary thing about this debate that really puzzles me is nobody focuses on what the consumption of British steel is and where it comes from, Martin. The facts are, at the moment, we produce 40% of our steel, okay? That we consume around 7 million tonnes a year. Do you know what we export every year? We export 10 million tonnes of scrap steel to Turkey. So if we actually use the new electric arcs for that scrap steel, we could make Britain almost totally independent on steel. The thing that Richard, when he waxes lyrical about British steel for British coal, what he doesn't refer to is that we have to import iron ore from Sweden to do virgin steel. And the magic thing about recycled steel is that it's the same strength as virgin steel. So, and the other point that Richard misses, and I think it's extraordinary, he's proposing £500 million investment in a clapped out plant. It's 30 years old. It's losing £700,000 a day. So it will cost £250 million a year to keep it running. If we invest the £500 million Richard wants us to invest in Scunthorpe, in the old technology, that would imply that for the next 10 years, we have to invest £250 million subsidy to keep it going. That's insane. Why has the rest of the developed world moved away from coking coal? 70% of
well, they haven't.
70%
well, they haven't. So just a few points there. So we need virgin proper steel if we want to rearm, if we want to meet defence targets, if we want to build all of these millions of new houses, and that takes the strongest type of steel. Railways, that takes the strongest type of steel, Donica, and that's virgin steel. We can't melt down washing machines to get steel of the correct strength to do that. It's simply not possible. And Germany is pushing ahead, and Rheinmetall is booming because Germany understands it needs to have its own blast furnaces to be a crucible of development and wealth. So actually, across Europe, they are putting money and resources into steel.
Tell me, Martin, where's the best steel produced in Britain? Is it produced in Scunthorpe and virgin steel? Is it produced in Tata Steel? No, it's not. It's produced in Rotherham.
Well, it was in Port Talbot, but it's been shut.
The best steel in Britain is produced in Rotherham and Sheffield by electric arc furnaces for nuclear facilities and for nuclear submarines. 70% of America has already switched to electric arc. Why have they switched, Martin? Because it's 5 times more efficient. You need 5 times more staff to run an old-fashioned plant like Scunthorpe. And surely you, as a free marketeer, would not support inefficient plants.
Donica, a huge issue is we've got massively expensive electricity in Britain. That's the thing. Anyway, we're going to go cross live now to Washington, D.C. Donald Trump is participating in a swearing-in ceremony for the administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Day. It's a day that we're delighted to swear in Dr. Mehmet Oz as the next administrator of the Centers for Medicine and Medicaid Services, which is a big deal. Congratulations to Dr. Oz and his beautiful wife, Lisa, and their friends and family on this really incredible achievement. Come a long way, huh? It's amazing. Dr. Oz comes to this position as one of the nation's most talented and beloved medical professionals. He graduated from Harvard University. Ah, Harvard, well, how convenient. Should we talk about Harvard? Before obtaining his MD at the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, a great one, and really some amazing education while also earning an MBA from the wonderful Wharton School of Business. He completed his medical residency at the world-renowned New York Presbyterian Columbia University Medical Center. Dr. Oz then had a sterling medical career in which he became an internationally acclaimed heart and lung surgeon, highly respected. He served as director of the Cardiovascular Institute and Integrative Medicine program at New York Presbyterian and as a longtime professor at Columbia University's College of Physicians and Surgeons. Boy, oh boy, doctor, I thought he just did a show. I only know the show. You know why I know the show? Because he said, I'm a little overweight. I should lose some weight. I did a show, and that's what I got out of it. That was not good. But I'm looking at all of this other. This is very impressive. Dr. Oz authored more than 400 contributions to academic and scientific publications and holds several patents for technologies that revolutionize cardiovascular surgery. And Dr. Oz later translated his experience into an extraordinarily successful television career, making him one of the most trusted voices on healthcare. And he also got very high ratings, I can tell you that. He did great with the television thing. As CMS Administrator, Dr. Oz will work tirelessly to strengthen and protect Medicare for our nation's seniors and Medicaid for the needy. Just as I promised, there will be no cuts. We're not going to have any cuts. We're going to have only help. Dr. Oz will work to improve the quality of care for decades to come, and he'll ensure that criminals, fraudsters, and illegal aliens are not permitted to rob America's seniors. They are trying, but they're not going to get away with it. He will also work alongside Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I've heard of him. He's a pretty famous guy. He's doing a great job, too, to address the crisis of chronic illness and to make America healthy again. So I want to just thank Dr. Oz, and because this is a big commitment he's making. He has a lot of options, and this is a big, big commitment. And I want to congratulate you and your family on really an amazing life. And I think this is going to be by far the most important part of an already incredible life. So thank you very much.
God bless you.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you very much. Take care of yourself. Congratulations. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's Donald Trump there in Washington, D.C. He's swearing in the administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Of course, a huge part of America's healthcare service. It was hugely fought over in the previous elections where Obama wanted Medicare to be free for all. It became a massively divisive topic, and in fact was the topic in 2016. My sister lives in Texas, and this is a huge, huge issue.
All enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully.
Discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
Discharge the duties of the office upon I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God. God bless you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, brother. I've got to start off by thanking three people. Mr. President, thank you very much. God bless you for leading our nation, but also courageously leading the MAHA movement, really earnestly in your heart wanting to get America to be healthy again, and for giving me an opportunity to help with that mission. Secretary Kennedy has been leading the charge at Health and Human Services. A dear friend, like a brother, has done unbelievably courageous work because he's curious and he's started answering a lot of important questions. And I will treasure for the rest of my days your trust in me to help you with this progress. Thank you. And of course, Lisa, the family, but Lisa in particular, who's had an uncanny ability to identify opportunities and to always keep a clear North Star to keep our family grounded. God bless you, my beautiful one. Let me start with a simple premise. Every great society, everyone, has an opportunity to take care of its most vulnerable and treasures that opportunity. And we're a great people, so we will do the same. As we entered the main building, the Humphreys building, where Health and Human Services is located, there's a placard.
Yeah, that was Donald Trump in Washington, D.C., swearing in the new administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Hugely important topic in America because healthcare is one of the biggest outgoings of the middle classes. Basically, Donald Trump won in 2016 because Obama threatened to give free Medicare to everybody. That would have meant the middle classes got absolutely squeezed. Medicare is massively important in America. There's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including including infected blood victims, face 40% death tax bills. Incredibly cruel. I'll be joined by a survivor, and that's next. OK, I'm going to them now. Now, moving on, because we are joined now, actually, by... Let's keep to it. Adam. I'm going to go to Adam Sherry. Adam, you were listening into there with Donald Trump, and let's get back to the moment about where he's had a confirmed telephone call now. Yeah. Keir Starmer has spoken with Donald Trump. Are we expecting? We keep hearing there's going to be a great trade deal. It's going to be sometime soon. Are you confident that things are going to get moving anytime soon?
I suppose Trump wants to have a win from these tariffs, and if he can say, look, I've got a deal here, I've secured what I want from the UK, it proves that it sort of vindicates him. And by the way, I'd actually quite like to, I'm trying to find out, I'd quite like to know who initiated that call, because often when I speak to the Downing Street team, the press team, you get the impression that these calls are quite impromptu, and actually it's whenever the president, it's at his whim, he picks up the phone and dials it and, hello, Keir. It's not in the traditional way where these things are organised between the teams in advance. They're more improvised than that. So that'll be interesting. Who's holding all the cards here, to use Trump's language. We're going back and forth on this. Like I said, yes, it would prove that Trump has gotten a win, but also what are the compromises? Yeah. What's Trump asking for? What is Starmer willing to give up? We're hearing these whispers about agriculture, food standards. Well, if Starmer concedes on that and allows US farmers to sell their chicken in the UK, what does that do for the relationship with the EU? And also, what does it do to farmers in the UK who are already...
That is a huge point. It's a huge conversation. Flooding Britain with cheap agricultural goods from America could impact them. Adam Cherry, thank you very much. I'm being told now we're ready to move on to a hugely important story, one that we've covered many, many times here on GB News, and that is the families of infected blood victims, astonishingly, are facing huge inheritance tax bills on their compensation, despite promises from the government that that money would be tax-free. And the government set aside £11.8 billion, if you recall, for the infected blood scandal, families who'd lost bereavements. And they were told that the payments would be exempt from income tax, capital gains tax and inheritance tax. However, it has since emerged that the exemption only applies to the first time the compensation is inherited. And let's go to Northamptonshire now and speak to an infected blood scandal victim, Sue Wathen. Sue, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you back on the show. I know this has impacted your life severely. Before we talk about the government's decision today, can you just remind our viewers of how this scandal impacted you personally?
Well, I was given hepatitis C as a result of an infected blood transfusion back in my 20s, so some considerable time ago. And I think that's where the problems now are being faced, because we're all getting older. We're getting more unwell, and this is the problem we're having, that people are dying at the rate of one person every 4 days. So that's where the impact is being felt.
And Sue, it must be so cruel. It feels so cruel and difficult for you to get your head around the fact that the pledge was that this would be entirely tax-free. There'd be no income tax, no capital gains tax, and no inheritance tax. And this is after decades and decades of fighting to get this money paid out. Many people have passed away. Many people will be elderly, of course, so there's less time to deal with their tax affairs. Does this feel like yet another re-traumatising of the situation from the government towards people like yourselves?
I think we're not quite clear on where the boundaries are. We were told that it would be inheritance tax free, and that certainly, I believe, will be the case if you are an infected person. Where it is likely to have more impact is if you are an affected person, so you were the offspring of someone who was infected, or you were a sibling of someone who's infected. And I think that is where we're likely to have problems, because there is no forever exempt. And I think that is probably what people are finding now hard to accept, because those people themselves are getting older.
So that situation is, if you were directly infected, then you understand then it will be exempt from tax. But if you're a relative, it may not be. But surely, Sue, I mean, for example, if you win the lottery, then it's tax-free. Surely every payment, every payout, no matter to somebody if they're infected directly or a relative, you would like to see a situation where the entire lot is exempt.
Well, it would be lovely, wouldn't it? But I suppose if you win the lottery, I don't know, I've never been that fortunate. But if you win the lottery, I suppose when you actually die, that becomes part of your estate, doesn't it? So then that would be subject to inheritance tax. And of course, the problem with the affected is that they are further down the payout. So they are likely to be that it's the infected that are going to be paid first. So the affected are all, by the very nature of the scheme, are going to be paid out later. So I can see that it's very difficult. And I hope we're going to get some clarification on this from the Paymaster General on the 7th of May, when he will give evidence to the reconvened hearings.
OK, well, I hope you get the justice you deserve. It's so lovely to see you looking so well and so healthy and sprightly on this Easter Friday. Thank you very, very much. It was a pleasure to have your company, Sue. It really is. Thank you, Sue Watham, for joining us on GB News today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Now, government spokesman told us this. We have paid over £44 million so far in compensation, over £1 billion in interim payments, and we've set aside £11.8 billion to compensate victims. While no amount of compensation will make up for the suffering that people have endured, we are committed to delivering compensation as swiftly as possible. Now, let's return now to Washington, D.C., where Donald Trump is taking questions from the White House.
For 4 years. That's a war that should have never happened. October 7th, Israel would have never happened. Iran was broke. And now we'll see what happens with Iran. We have a lot of them out there. We have a lot of things that we're working on right now that shouldn't have happened. None of it. Ukraine would have never happened with Russia. October 7th would have never happened, so you wouldn't have had all the problems in the Middle East. The Afghanistan embarrassment, probably the most embarrassing day in the history of our country, would have never happened. Inflation would have never happened. By the way, prices are down. Groceries are down. Eggs, which you hit me so hard, I'll never forget the first week in office, they were screaming at me about eggs. I said, what's going on with eggs? They were doubling and tripling. I said, I just got here. They were up like double, triple, and you couldn't get any. And they said, you won't have eggs for Easter. Well, you can have all the eggs you want. I'll tell you, Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Agriculture, did a great job. And the egg prices are down 87%. But nobody talks about that. You can have all the eggs you want. We have too many eggs. In fact, if anything, the prices are getting too low. So I just want to let you know, prices are down. Gasoline yesterday in 3 states hit $1.98 a gallon. And it looks like it's at a level that it hasn't seen since my days, my 4 years. So it's about I'd say maybe, I think we're going to be averaging $2.25 very soon. So I just want to let you know, though, because I keep hearing about prices and inflation. Prices are coming down, not going up. Only the fake news says they're going up. The only thing that's even are interest rates. And if we had a Fed chairman that understood what he was doing, interest rates would be coming down too. He should bring them down. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, what do you need to see from both sides in order to keep negotiations going? What do you want to see from Russia and Ukraine?
I have to see. My whole life has been one big negotiation, and I know when people are playing us, and I know when they're not, and I have to see an enthusiasm to want to end it. And I think I see that enthusiasm. I think I see it from both sides.
Do you think Russia's
But you're going to know soon.
Do you think Russia's playing you?
No, nobody's playing me. I'm trying to help. You know, this was Biden's war. By the way, by me getting involved, you know, they'll say, oh, Trump. This is not Trump's war. This is Biden. This is a war that should have never happened. Okay? Think of it. Those cities are crushed and crashed, and all those beautiful steeples, the most beautiful in the world, actually considered the most beautiful in the world, most of them are now smashed to smithereens, as they say, and lying on the ground in a million pieces. Those towns are crushed, the whole place. It's so horrible. And millions of people are dead, far more than you think. That's one thing you're going to get out of this war. You're going to find out that your estimates are far lower than, it's far worse than people think. Nobody's playing anybody. We are going to see if we can get it done. I think we have a really good chance of getting it done, and it's coming to a head right now.
If you do decide to support Ukraine militarily,
say it.
If you do decide to move on and take it past, Mr. President, would you then continue to support Ukraine?
Well, I'm not going to say that because I think we're going to get it done.
There's a group of Venezuelan men down in Texas who have been alerted that they are soon going to be deported under the Alien Enemies Act. Have you authorized that operation?
I don't know about the group you're talking about, but if they're bad people, I would certainly authorize it, yeah. You know, I won an election in a landslide. We won all 7 swing states. We won by millions of votes. We won 2,750 districts to 505 districts, 2,750 to 5. That's why the map, when you look at it, is all red. And one of the biggest reason, I think the biggest single reason, actually, I'd like to say it's because of this, because I think they're going to come up with things that are incredible. But probably the biggest reason was because of the border and because of illegal immigration. And the people of this country want those people out. Because what Biden did, and I don't know if he did it, I'm not even sure he knows what the hell he was doing, but what his people did, representing him, was allow millions and millions of people from jails, from prisons all over the world, people from mental institutions and insane asylums, gang members, drug dealers, pouring into our place. And you know what? Our people voted for me to get them out. They want them out. They want them out. And we've done a hell of a job. And by the way, Ecuador and various places, but El Salvador, we've been helped by a lot of other states where they're helping us, actually, because you couldn't look. What this man was thinking when they allowed open borders and people to come in, if you look at Venezuela, their crime is down by 72%. You know why? They took all their criminals off the street. They took all their prisoners from jail. They took murders. 11,088 murderers were released into our country. Bad things are going to happen. Bad things. And we're getting them out. And that's why I was elected. A judge wasn't elected to do that. I was elected to do that. And we're doing it in record fashion. We have the safest border, the most secure border we've ever had. See the Declaration of Independence? You should all read that before you leave. That's the real deal. You should all read it before you leave. Yeah. Sir, go ahead, please.
Photos have emerged of Senator Van Hollen sipping what appears to be margaritas with Rodrigo Garcia down in El Salvador. Do you encourage other Democrats to fly down to El Salvador to meet with this illegal alien who's been accused of
I like this guy. See, now this is the kind of a reporter we like. There aren't enough of them. We got to get some more of them. But no, I appreciate that question. No, look, he's a fake. I know him. I know them all. They're all fake. And they have no interest in that prisoner. That prisoner's record is unbelievably bad. If you would go into the room, you might, if you would, Caroline, maybe go into the room and see if you can find that little slip. I wrote some things down. I don't know why you'd want to keep him, but we got a little biography of him. Not a very innocent guy. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, in the spirit of Easter Sunday.
While we're on the subject, right? So you're talking about Abrego Garcia. Is that the one? Yeah. Is an illegal alien, MS-13 gang member and foreign terrorist. This comes out of the State Department and very legitimate sources. I mean, I assume I'm just giving you what they handed to me, but this was supposed to be certified stuff. In 2019, Garcia was issued a deportation order. 2 separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13, which is a gang that may be even worse than Tren de Aragua, and maybe worse. They kill people with knives because it's more painful. Very famous for the knifing and killing of 2 young 16-year-old girls walking to school one day, and they sliced them up into little pieces and killed them. That's MS-13. And 2 separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13. When Garcia was originally arrested, he was wearing a sweatshirt with rolls of money pouring out, an MS-13 gang symbol that he was driving with two other known violent MS-13 gang members, two of the most violent members that we know of in the MS-13 gang of thugs. In 2022, Garcia was stopped by the Tennessee Highway Patrol and was found to be transporting 7 people from Texas to Maryland, and he had no driver's license. He was driving violently. In 2020 and 2021, Garcia's wife filed for a protective order from him and said he was violent and abusive and really scary, including allegations that he punched and scratched her on the eye, left her bleeding after throwing her laptop on the floor at her, ripped her shirt, and ripped off her shorts. He then grabbed her arm, leaving very severe marks. Garcia's wife also wrote in court, "At this point, I am afraid to be close to him. I just don't want to be close. I have multiple photos and videos how violent he can be and all of the bruises that he's left on me." She just couldn't get anywhere near him. This is the man that the Democrats are wanting us to fly back from El Salvador to be a happily ensconced member of the USA family. Isn't it a shame? And by the way, I've been hit pretty hard by fake shows, fake news, MSDNC in particular, where they talk about how evil I am, that this man would be thrown out of our country. This man is according to certified statements that we get, is a very violent person. And they want this man to be brought back into our country where he can be free and to stay as a happily Maryland, they call him the Maryland man. He's a Maryland father. No, this is a violent person. Who they don't talk about is that wonderful angel mom who lost her daughter, who had 5 beautiful children, and she was killed violently. And, she spoke, and she spoke unbelievably. I saw it. And the fake news didn't pick it up. She spoke. She was in tears. She's devastated. Her life is, essentially, she's told me her life is like over. But there was I think no stories. Isn't that true? No stories. 0 stories. It was the most emotional thing. Everybody that watched it, they couldn't believe it. The fake news refused to put it up. So it's very sad. And yet they talk about this guy like he's an angel. See the angel up there? They think he's like that, like a little angel.
Would you be open
It has no impact. The way she did, look at her. No impact. It's just unbalanced. Would you do that? Go ahead. What I would do.
On Iran, would you be open to letting Iran keep some kind of civil nuclear program?
No impact whatsoever.
Program need to be dismantled?
I'm for stopping Iran, very simply, from having a nuclear weapon. They can't have a nuclear weapon. I want Iran to be great and prosperous and terrific. I stopped them once they were broke and they didn't have any money for Hamas. They didn't have any money for Hezbollah. There wouldn't have been an October 7th disaster. They were broke. They had no money, and they weren't spending it to terrorist organizations because they had none. When Biden came in, he took all the sanctions off. China wasn't allowed to buy. I said, if you buy, because they're their biggest customer, I said, you buy 1 barrel of oil, just 1 barrel of oil from Iran, and you can't do business in the United States. And by the way, we have nice conversations going with China just to intercede, It's really very good. But with Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. And if they have a nuclear weapon, you'll all be very unhappy. You'll all be very unhappy because your life will be in great danger. Yeah. Yeah. Ooh.
Press out, press out.
No, she's out.
Okay, well, that was a live feed from the White House. Donald Trump holding a press conference this Good Friday, talking about all sorts, as he usually does, illegal migration, Medicaid, and also this situation